Good. Me too.
Everybody in this room is happy.
We're all happy.
And before we vote, do I still need to talk to state?
So when you speak, say your name.
Looks like it's 1 o'clock.
Oh, my watch is wrong. I trust me. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Please note that one of our members is absent today. Patty Graff isn't here and won't be with us. Michael, if you wouldn't mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, opening public comment. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and control of the Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker unless additional time is granted by the board chairperson. The Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board says we use timing lights. We use Lauren to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Your time will be monitored manually, and you'll be verbally notified when you have 30 seconds left and when your time has expired. Upon being notified that your time has expired, please sit down. Before I open up public comment, I need to make sure that you all understand this very clearly. We are an advisory panel only. We are not policymakers, so we're happy to hear your comments. But the longer that public comment takes on the front end and the back end is less time that we have to do our work. So I would like you to, try and make your comments brief and to the point. Like I said, I'm happy to see all of you here. I think public input is great and it helps us with our decision making, but our decisions are just the first of, from there it goes to the county commissioners for their policy approvals.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would like to add to that and just let folks know that if they're here for matters relating to perhaps a petition that was on the news last night, I would like to make it very clear that this board does not have jurisdiction or authority to grant the petition one way or another. That is only the Board of County Commissioners. So.
Can you state your name, please?
My name is Sam Taylor. Sorry. Thank you very much. For the record, from the Douglas County District Attorney's Office.
Madam Chair,
Thank you, Mr.
I
Strelo.
have one comment. Can I?
Okay, Mr. Strelo.
Mr. Strelo, Ernie Strelo for the record. I just want to let everybody know I use transcription software. So when you get up and you speak, please say who you are, first and last name, very clearly. Spell your last name and speak very clearly when you in your conversation so we can capture everything. We capture verbatim everything, right? And that's for the board too. When you do motions, please be very clear so we know what we're motioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strelo. Okay, this is opening public comment. If it's about anything on our agenda, wait till that agenda item comes up. But general public comment, Linda.
My name is Linda Dangler, and I'm with the Tahoe Douglas Neighborhood Group. We're a group who are getting petitions signed in order to tell the board, because I know you guys advise the board, this is about advising the board, to tell the board what we, the local people, think. Nobody's ever asked us, we're asking ourselves, and we're going to submit that. I have real concerns because I've submitted documents to you guys about this notice and order that stopped 650 Tina Court from continuing to run their commercial business in their property. Okay, so in the rules, when you look at the things that I submitted to public comment, the rules are about home occupation. And when you look at that, what they're doing is taking it from being a commercial thing to what it's supposed to be, non-commercial, but it requires these specific things in home occupation. So those specific things now are really requirements of every VHR that exists, because they all are about parties and events and bachelor parties and bachelorette parties and pre-wedding parties. They're all these 15, 20, 50 people that they get, they're about parties. So they would have to live by those rules too, and I don't think a single VHR, especially the higher numbered ones, begin to continue. I mean, the 5 near me have 15, 20 people on the deck all the time. Guess what? They should be living by the codes that the code enforcement department just put out. And I need you to really look at the special permit, because you guys are approving of special permits. There's a process whereby we're supposed to be noted so many days ahead. The entire community in the area is supposed to be pre-noted. We're supposed to be able to come to meetings. I gave you this, all guys, the special permit stuff. And in the end, after you're done approving of any of these changes to the tier 3s, the planning commission then has to have them back and approve of them. It says so in the code. So I want to know if that's happening, or are these guys just all getting their tier 3 permits and nobody's bothering to take it back to the planning commission? You're not following the special use permit rules that are required for what you're doing. And I'd really appreciate it if you would do that. And anybody who wants to see me to sign this document after the fact, we're getting as many signatures as we can. We have to do it outside. I will be respectful here. But you know, it's time for us to speak up. And nobody else has let us speak up ever. So that's probably less than my 3 minutes, but those codes are important and we need to see that they're being followed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Opening public comment.
Ellie Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R. As always, I want to thank everybody that's participating. To the public, patience, patience, patience. The public needs to understand this is an arduous task. I spend a lot of personal time doing my research to bring up meaningful comments to each meeting, and hopefully they're related to everything that is on the agenda. If you have issues, there's a VHR email and hotline. It's all been published, it's all been stated here. If you're new to the area, there is a wait list. This is not an entitlement. Douglas County permits are required before advertising. This is just general information that may need to be reminded to people that come that are the first timers here. Also, please don't clap. I mean, we all have opinions. It's just disruptive, especially to me. I don't know about these members. The key here is permits do have requirements. The code is in flux. You need to read it often when it's updated sometime this year. Appreciate everything that everybody does. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Opening public comment.
I'm Stephen Kaplan, K-A-P-L-A-N. Advisory Board members, on Saturday, August 6th at 6:10 p.m., the Douglas County Sheriff's Office responded to a Kingsbury resident, who I'm going to refer to only as X, complaining about, quote, a loud wedding party, unquote, at our VHR at 650 Tina Court. In the incident report, Officer Graves wrote that for the next 2 hours and then throughout the evening, he spent time at multiple nearby residences and did not hear any noise. When visiting X's house 1,600 feet away across the canyon, X's spouse brought Officer Graves onto the outside deck and claimed that they could sometimes hear females cheering their brides during weddings. X has repeatedly harassed our guest and has stated an intention to continue filing claims despite the Douglas County DA confirming guests are allowed to host events such as small weddings as long as they comply with the VHR ordinance. X has also publicly and repeatedly slandered my wife Wendy and me with defamatory and fraudulent written statements to the advisory board and county, and has published online our personal phone numbers and personal residence address, along with inflammatory claims which have made Wendy fearful for our safety. Wendy and I strive to be both great VHR hosts and great neighbors. For example, just one of the many noise preventative measures we have implemented are the 10 monitored noise sensors we've installed throughout the property, along with 4 monitored cameras positioned to discern man-made noise from the frequent very loud winds. If man-made noise levels ever reach 65 decibels during the day or 55 decibels at night, we take immediate action. This brief statement can't begin to list all of the X's harassment, defamations, and fraudulent accusations. And it's not just us. Another VHR host submitted documents showing harassment, trespassing, and stalking by X, such as using a high-powered camera to take pictures of guests inside their home, including children, and then leaving their guests frightened by the experience. X's incessant harassment is due to a vendetta against VHRs rather than due to any actual grievance. In his report, Officer Graves quoted X as saying, "I know by my experience and the time I'm spending getting rid of VHRs, which I'm going to do. That's my goal. I'll give you my card that says eliminate VHRs in Douglas County. You will know X. You will know me." VHR Ordinance Thank you. VHR Ordinance 2021-1582 does a great job of protecting residents against the few irresponsible VHR hosts. But I respectfully request the board to ask the county if there's some type of measure that can be passed protecting responsible VHR hosts and their guests against the few irresponsible residents. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Opening public comment?
I'm going to stand up and say my so that they want to vote tomato.
Hi, my name's Dale Roberts, and I'm against the VHRs as they stand at this moment because there's really no vetting of the people who rent them. Anybody can get them with a credit card. It doesn't matter. Lots of people can get credit cards. Lots of unsavory people can get credit cards. They are not met at the door for the most part. They're usually given a lockbox code with the key in it. This code is usually not changed. I know several myself that have not been changed in quite a while, and so that just gives open season for anybody later to come in, and there can be some unsavory elements later who have come in. And with that in mind, there's no security, virtually no security for the guest. And also that what happens is when you have noise there, remember that 70 decibel limit is over a 24-hour period. You brought it up in a meeting 2 months ago in June, talking about how the 70 decibels is an industrial standard for a house in an industrial zone for a factory nearby. You can hit 500 decibels and it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't go above the 70 decibel level for that 24-hour period. So all the noise monitors you put in your house, outside in your deck, they mean absolutely nothing because you even said yourself at that meeting, there's no way to enforce this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Anybody else would like to make that opening public comment?
Hi, my name's Tony Russo. I host some vacation rentals. I know back in the day before when Airbnb and VRBO came online, where people could actually just go on and book, there was a lot of issues with vacation rentals. I get it. At this point, I think Douglas County is doing a really good job of trying to put some regulations down regarding VHRs. I think as a host needs to thoroughly screen their guests. Whoever's inquiring, they need to have a thorough conversation with that particular guest who's going to be renting the property. Back in the day, not that long ago, I know people were just, oh, Airbnb, boom, and they were just taking the money. And it was out of control. There was no regulation. I think Douglas County is doing a great job, and I think if they stick with it, I think we can have it where everybody can be happy with these VHRs. So I just feel that trying to eliminate a VHR in our county, Douglas County, is going to affect so many businesses, restaurants, grocery stores, everything else. It just needs to be monitored and regulated. And I think Douglas County is doing a good job with that. That's all I need to say, and I hope we can continue doing it. Thanks.
Additional public comment?
I'm going to read her statement because she's too nervous. Should I put my name and her name on this?
Yes. Why don't you? And then when you read the statement, spell your last name.
Okay. Get your glasses. Oh, your glasses, yeah. Okay.
My name is Nita Summers. I live at Lake Tahoe, Douglas County for many years. And this letter was really written to the commissioners, and I will send a copy of it to them, but I don't speak too well. And I'm having Janice read my letter.
You've met Nita. I'm Janice Brand. I live on Cheyenne Way. Douglas County Commissioners, my name is Nita Summers. I live on Kingsbury Grade, Douglas County, Lake Tahoe. My point is residential property in Douglas County, Lake Tahoe, is zoned as single-family residence. VHRs are a commercial business. The word is commissioners will not vote against stopping VHRs because they bring in a great amount of money to the county at the expense of homeowners living in Douglas County, Lake Tahoe. As if the casinos and the convention center will not provide more than enough income to the county with their taxes and room tax revenue. Known fact is the casinos have contributed greatly to Douglas County as long as they have existed, making Douglas County a rich county. If the VHRs are not brought to a stop and eliminated from Lake Tahoe, Douglas County, shame on them, shame on the commissioners for not representing their people just and fairly. Juanita Summers.
Thank you.
And then I have a neighbor that would like to temporarily remain anonymous, but he will contact you. And he says, how 3 in a row were allowed on the same street?
Excuse me.
Cheyenne Circle. It's my neighbor on Cheyenne. But I'll put it in my name if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, put it in your name since you were
Okay.
speaking for her. That would be better.
We asked how 3 in a row were allowed on the same street of VHRs, and that's on Cheyenne Circle, in the East Fork Township, or ban them everywhere. In other words, if you're going to do it up here, if East Fork doesn't have to have rentals, we don't have to have rentals. And that's what my neighbor would like me to say. I would like to say that I've had experience for years with VHRs, having come from Tahoe Keys 17 years ago. That's part of what had us move from the Tahoe Keys was the disruption and the misery of living next to vacation rentals. You can control them to a certain extent, but you're never going to control them completely. You need to make sure that you put a very, very strong requirement for the owner to be first responder when a call is made to stop it. And we had a disturbance on our street several weeks ago, and nothing was done because the neighbor supposedly overreacted to the rental. So we need to find a way to get the owners on a second complaint to kick the person out as a requirement. And they may be false complaints, doesn't matter. That means the neighbors know what's happening and it's bothering them. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comment? Yep.
My name is Steve Palmieri, Palmiri. I own a vacation condo directly across the street from Stagecoach Lift, which means I'm directly across the street from the Ridge Tahoe, the Oahu Club, a number of vacation rentals that were actually built after my condominium was built. So I don't think I'm disturbing any of my neighbors being a vacation rental host, which makes me think that this is a zoning problem and there needs to be code enforcement, which is the direction that you guys are headed. I've had experience with code enforcement this year. On my renewal permit, I found them to be responsive and professional and heading in the right direction. And patience is the answer. The bad apples will get weeded out. The good apples, which I consider myself one of, we hosted 22 families that got to ski in and ski out, which is an experience they wouldn't get anywhere else. And we didn't disturb anybody doing it. So thank you.
Thank you. Opening public comment?
My name is Bernie Hittner. I live at Upper Kingsbury at 648 Jack Circle.
Can you spell your last name?
Yes, Hittner. I just want to talk a little bit about the issue of VHRs being in single-family residential neighborhoods, and particularly with respect to the tier, especially the tier 3, but basically, when you're talking about a tier 3 VHR, you're talking about a hotel. It's a commercial enterprise. You can have, I don't know how many people, 22 people. It can be rented 365 days a year. It's basically a hotel. Well, there is basically a commercial VHR in our single-family residential neighborhood. And it is available for rent 365 days a year. It's a commercial enterprise. It's in a single-family residential neighborhood. When people are there, it's lit up all night long, just like a hotel. It's very disturbing to be in the neighborhood. It's kind of amazing to me that basically you can open a hotel right next to a single-family residence. So I think that these VHRs should be limited, and they should be limited to commercial areas or high-density multifamily areas. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
Hi, Doug.
Take your name and spell your last. I didn't know if you heard that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Doug Kraus, Kraus, for the record. Just to briefly reinforce, I think the comments here on both sides of the issue. So to state my standing, I am both a resident of the county and a VHR owner. So I can kind of see both aspects. I do want to compliment the work you guys are doing here. I know it's not easy because there's a lot of trade-offs here to be made. I would also ask that, from what I can tell, there's been a lot of discussion about, the economic impacts one way and the other. I would encourage that, and I don't know if this has been done yet, some sort of an independent economic study be done so we can, kind of better understand, if as the signatures may happen, that there's something on the ballot. I just think it helps everybody make a more informed decision because it's not really easy to figure out all the economic impacts and whatnot. So the other thing I would like to reiterate is, as a VHR owner, my goal is to be a really good neighbor. My goal is to provide an experience that cannot be provided, at least to the same level, by the hotels. I think for a long time, I know, has been a use in the Tahoe area, clearly. I don't know, maybe the third house in Tahoe was some sort of rental, right? So I would like to continue to be part of the solution as to, how do we best coexist in a way that benefits, everybody involved. And I think you guys are really trying to do that. And so thank you. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Opening public comment?
My name is Kathy Oyster, spelled O-Y-S-T-E-R. I would like to speak to the board members and encourage you to please put a moratorium on all of your decisioning. Clearly, you have a problem with how these rules are being implemented. You've got rules that were in the red line edition that literally can't be implemented. We've been told recently that lot lines, for instance, might be incorrect at the county level. Well, those should be verified by you and your team and your code enforcement before you ever give a permit. Because how in the world do you expect your officers to come out and say they're parked in the road? You don't know where the road is, okay? Now, I happen to agree with the gentleman that was speaking, saying that these tier 3s are commercial. I would call all of these VHRs tier 2 and 3 multifamily dwellings, because they're not one family. They are multiple families, potentially over 50 a year. We could be having a 50-unit apartment building right next to us. They just happen to be coming week by week. They're not our neighbors. And I do believe one of the fourth paragraph, perhaps, of that last commission statement of what was your mission. And your mission is to have these rental units be folded into the fabric of the community. And I have heard over the past couple of months how they're not folded into the fabric of the community, and how our community protectors, our officers, have no ability to enforce those rules. And I'm not talking about code enforcement. You have taken away the code part of this enforcement. The only thing they can do is go to the police. So if you guys can't write rules that are enforceable, then there are no rules whatsoever. And I'm telling you, it is the wild, wild west out here. It is. There was something I heard very recently, maybe just in the past few minutes, that if one of these tier 3s gets permitted, that person can retire. I don't know, it sounds like a business to me. So please, think about what you're doing. These are surges to 50 that are being allowed. If that's not an event facility, I don't know what is. Please consider what you're doing. A moratorium is warranted.
Any other opening public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment on the opening side of it. Moving on to approval of the agenda. For possible action, approval of the proposed agenda. The Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board reserves the right to take items in a different order to accomplish business in the most efficient manner, to combine 2 or more agenda items for consideration, and to remove items from the agenda or delay discussion relating to items on the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the agenda.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Moved by Keith Byer, second by Lauren Romaine. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that would be a 4-0, thank you. I'm going to take item number 3 first. For possible action, discussion on an appeal challenging the revocation of a VHR permit and the denial of a Tier 3 VHR permit application. The subject VHR permit, account number 084000422, was for a 7-bedroom home, 14-person occupancy, located at 626 Jeff Lane, APN 131919310012. The permit was originally issued to James Richter, the current owner of the property, and applicant for a Tier 3 VHR permit is SSL Properties LLC, which is a closely held limited liability company with members Han Dao and Luan Lee, who reside together. I'm going to turn this over to...
Madam Chair, just real quickly, I've consulted the legal counsel as well about a potential conflict of interest I've reviewed. I intend to use Mr. Johnson's firm for some personal trust matters. I went through a decision process. I have not made that decision yet, but I went through a process. I believe I can be fair and objective. Mr. Johnson is not the appellant. He's just their advocate. So I believe I do not have a conflict of interest, and I'll hear and act on the agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Haynes.
Thank you. AJ Hames from the District Attorney's Office. Subsequent to the action that was taken in this case in filing of the appeal by the appellant, SSL Properties, additional information was provided to the county, and based on that information, the county and SSL Properties were able to reach a resolution in this case. There is going to be a settlement, and the appeal will not be pursued. And so what I would recommend to the board at this time is that the board make a motion to remove item 3 from the agenda.
Lauren Romaine, so moved.
Keith Byers, second.
Okay, I have a motion by Lauren.
It's just FYI, it is for possible action, the motion is, so you need to take public comment.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You're right. Okay, public comment on item number 3.
Hi, Mike Johnson, attorney for the appellant or the permit holder. First of all, I want to thank staff for working through this. As you can tell by the volume of documents I brought with me today, and you were spared from having to look at it. It's actually a fairly complex matter, but I think staff has worked through it. I want to clarify the resolution. We're going to subsequently follow this up with further documentation, but the agreement that we have with staff, with community development, is that the permit is now recognized as valid and current as of right now going forward. And then the tier designation, which has not yet taken place, we can agendize and deal with that at the next appropriate opportunity, which I would imagine be the third Wednesday in September, to deal with that issue. Before I forget, with me today are the members of the LLC, Troy Lay, I call him Troy, and Han Dow, and my co-counsel Marissa Fox. So I just wanted, if Mr. Haynes would just confirm, in fact, that this permit is considered valid by the county as of right now, and then the tier designation, currently it's designated a tier 2 permit. That'll be ultimately determined, however, if it's entitled to tier 3 status at a subsequent hearing with you all in September.
Madam Chair, if I may comment. AJ Haynes from the District Attorney's Office. That is the gist of the resolution, and so ultimately this board will still review the Tier 3 application for that property, but the action of revocation, that was the part that was settled between the county and the applicants.
Are we required to hear it on the September meeting? Is that part of your agreement? I mean, because I know we've got Tier 3 scheduled throughout the next several months.
180 days?
The 180-day period has passed for that property, and so part of that is because of the revocation and then the appeal, but the property was approved in December of 2021, and so they will continue to rent out the property pending the review by this board, and so ultimately it should go forward as quickly as possible to ensure that review happens as close to that 6-month deadline as we can achieve.
I just wasn't sure if that was part of the agreement.
Sorry, they can rent as a tier 3 until that time, correct? Or a tier, because he mentioned tier 2, but it would actually be a tier 3 given the bedrooms, or would a tier 2 until we hear it?
My understanding is their intent is to rent out as a tier 2.
Okay.
Because they're going to try to avoid booking as if they were a tier 3 and then a possible deduction to a tier 2. So just to simplify things, they're going to be rented as a tier 2.
Thank you.
So we should get this on the agenda as quickly as we can then. Okay, so I'll work with Mr. Strelo on that. Any?
No, so I think this is what they call settling on the courthouse steps. I think we have an agreement that won't require any action from you all until September, or when we get this on, hopefully September, for the tier designation issue.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call more public comment. I don't know if there's anybody else that wants to make public comment on this matter. State your name and spell your last name, please.
Right, I will. Off the agenda, you can't discuss it.
Sorry?
If I'm correct, you pulled it from the agenda. we can't have any discussion on it, and we already started discussing.
We haven't pulled it yet.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, basically, that is not correct. The vote was not taken on the item and the motion. So the public comment is preceding the vote on the item.
And the
So it
item-
has not yet been formally pulled from the agenda as of yet, and therefore public comment can be had.
Yes. And I'll just add, AJ Hinge from the DA's office, the item was called. Item 3 was called,
Yes.
and prior to any vote on the motion, there is public comment.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Cruz, CRUZ, like Santa Cruz. I am the neighbor, or I live next door to this rental, and we've had problems. I've been here for 2018. We've had issues with trespassing. We've had peeping Tom bill violations. They've had some drones fly over my deck, red light coming into my sliding glass door. I had a break and entering. I had to call the sheriff's department. The renter broke down, kicked down 2 doors, and walked in and crashed out because out drunk. And so not 1 door, but 2 doors. Even if it's a rental, you'll kick a door in. So I talked to the previous owner, but it doesn't matter who owns it. A renter's a renter, and I've been living with this since 2018. And people still come down to my deck, look in my window, knock on my door, and say, "Is this our rental?" Every time. Uber stops in front of us. They're coming in at 2, 3 in the morning. I'm not against a good time in Tahoe. Just don't come down at 3 in the morning and knock on my window. So I had 2 incidents with drones. One had a camera. I look out with my wife. There's a red light in our living room. And so I'm like, what is that? It's a drone. So what do? I picked up a water bottle. Hope that's not against the law. And I chucked it at it. I missed. The other one was another drone during the winter. This guy loses his drone. I'm in my boxers. I come out, and this guy's on my deck, 10 feet from my deck. And he's like, I go, "Dude, what are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm looking for my drone." And I said, "This is my deck. You've gone to 2 gates to get down here. And this is trespassing. Do you know where you are? This is Nevada. Do you understand when you're like 10 feet from my door and I'm in my boxers?" That's gonna piss me off, and it did. And it's been going on constantly. And after the last meeting, there's been renters. And I don't know if it's been revoked, that means no renting. I see renters there. I'm just telling you. So, I don't know how this decision, this court steps happens, but I never knew about it, and I definitely do not want to see any more renters. And I speak for my whole neighborhood, which is pretty close. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Please make the signature.
Oh, I didn't want to take that. Don't hold it against me.
Good.
Ellie Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R. I wasn't going to comment. I hope Mr. Cruz will file this as a complaint online so it's documented to help you and also show up when it's agendized. Thank you.
Okay.
Do I have to sign again?
Yes.
Okay. Now, by the shirt, I'm obviously against the whole business of VHRs. And I'll continue to work to be against VHRs at all costs. Yet, I'm going to say something here because as we've been out and about canvassing, I guess this way, I don't know, the neighborhood and gathering signatures, we've been talking to a lot of people and getting input as far as how they feel
Mr.
about
Roberts,
things. Wait, let me finish.
Well, I just want to make sure that you're going to be discussing.
On this, yes
item
it
number
is.
3.
Absolutely, I'm giving a little background.
Okay.
And what we have discovered from talking to people, that when a discussion comes up with tier 3s versus tier 2s, they say that when people have lost their tier 2s, because they can't get 50 million people in there, or whatever the 14 is or something, and they can only have 8, they say the noise, the problems, the traffic, the garbage, you name it, has dramatically reduced. And when they had houses next door to them that become tier 3s, all of a sudden their worst nightmares entered the neighborhood. So when I listened to what I just listened with this gentleman, I just said that, you know, you need to think about this before you give tier 3s. You're trying to diminish the problems. And every time you approve a tier 3, you're making it worse and worse and worse. Thank you.
Okay, no, I'm not, unless there's more public comment on item number 3, everybody only gets one opportunity. So, seeing no more public comment on item number 3, I'm gonna close public comment.
New motion.
I have a motion from.
New motion.
A new motion?
Yeah.
Oh,
A new motion should follow public comment,
Oh.
in other words.
okay,
I move we take no action on this agenda item.
thank you.
That Laura Romaine, second.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Take no action on this item, all those in favor?
Does the board get to
Oh,
ask questions?
discussion, sorry, discussion, Michael, I know you had your hand raised, I
Yes.
apologize.
Even though we're gonna.
Can you
vote-
say your name?
Michael Sloan. Even though we're gonna be voting on this, I'd like to know from the district attorney's office, what led you to change your mind or to come to an agreement? What were the points, the specific key points that led you to say, okay, we're going to allow this at this time, when in fact, previously, it was revoked?
AJ Haynes, District Attorney's Office, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Documents that the county had when the application came through for the Tier 3 permit, and then other documents that were on file showed a change of ownership from one entity to another entity. Then upon determining who were the members of the various entities, the county determined that the prior entity was owned by an individual named James Richter. The new entity which owned the property was owned by the current owners of the property. And so to the county, it appeared that there had been a transfer of ownership of both the home and presumably also, at least in the minds of the parties, the permit. And so that is why the county determined to revoke the permit and had encouraged those applicants to apply for a VHR permit through the sort of a standard route, if that makes sense. Submitting a new application as new owners, going through the waitlist process, etc. The county subsequently determined that the transfer of ownership was slightly more complicated. The property was transferred from one entity to another entity, but at the time of the transfer, that entity was owned by the same person, this James Richter. So he essentially had transferred the property to himself. Subsequently, then that entity entirely was transferred to the current owners of that entity and the property. And although the current code expressly prohibits any type of transfer of a permit, the prior code was interpreted in a way that resulted in that same type of action, but there was no express prohibition against the transfer of a permit. And so based on that, and based on the fact that the ownership of the property had actually not changed even after the permit issued, it remained with the same entity, the county is now electing to use its discretion to treat that as not a transfer, especially since that transfer occurred under the prior version of the code, and to instead view it as a transfer of a membership group within an entity, but not necessarily a transfer of a property and a transfer of a permit.
Okay, so Michael Sloan, for the record. So complicated, I know, but basically it comes down to the fact that the transfer happened before it was expressly changed in our county code that you can't transfer one upon sale or transfer.
Yeah.
Is that correct? That was really the dividing line, that this happened before that code took effect?
Yeah.
Part of that code?
Two of the main factors were, one, this transfer occurred under the prior code.
Got it.
And the other being that the transfer itself was not a traditional transfer, and and that the property did not go from one owner to another per se, rather the members who make up the entity changed. And so based on those two factors, the county is elected to allow them to proceed. Now, under the current code, that type of a transfer would not be allowed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes.
Madam Chair, one more question if I may?
Certainly. I just wanted to make one comment, is I know that when we were discussing code prior to this current code, 1599, we all were asking that exact question.
Yeah.
And so I understand your line of questioning very well.
So we're going to be voting that we're not going to be taking action, but that they have a current code, tier 3 that they can operate at this present time until the board hears a special tier 3 request. Is that correct?
That is not my motion. My
Oh,
motion is to
what?
take no action.
Well-
So it is the county dealing with an appellant. And so my motion is not to make it tier 2, tier 3, revoke. My motion is to do nothing, is for this body to take no action and let the county continue their process with the appellant. Just to be clear on my motion, I don't know what you heard, but that's what I meant, and I probably, sorry, Keith Byer for the record, the Texan, so no one needs to know my name. You can tell my voice pretty distinctively, but that is my motion. It's not anything other than we take no action.
Mr. Byer, thank you. Michael Sloan for the record. I understand we're not taking any action. That being said, maybe I need to address this to Mr. Strelo. Are they able to now operate a tier 3 until our board hears of any special request for continue to operate as tier 3?
AJ Haynes for the record again. The agreement that we reached today was that they would operate it as a tier 2 until the review date.
Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you for your indulgence.
I have a motion and a second to take no action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, item number 1. Out of order here. Oh, shoot. I missed it on purpose. Okay. I'm really out of order. We have minutes to discuss. If I find my piece of paper. See what you lawyers do to me? Blaming it on you. Okay. Where's the real deal on it? There it is. Okay, sorry, people. We're all human here. For possible action, discussion to approve the draft minutes of the July 20th, 2022 special meeting of the Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board. I don't even know where to begin with those minutes. They're,
Ernie Strelo for the record. The
Yeah.
minutes were the ones at the Garnerville station where we had all the problems. So it was a puzzle, right? So that's all we can decipher from the data. So it's a little choppy at best.
okay. There we go. I know there were some technical difficulties. There were lots of them. And I know there's a lot of names spelled incorrectly. And I'm going to turn this over to whoever wants to. I don't know how we even approve these, but because there's a few things that need correction. One is a vote that was on page 12 regarding noise monitors in tier 2s, I think. And it said that it was approved 5-0, and I believe that that vote was not approved, 2-3. Is that correct with my fellow board members?
My understanding is we had a,
Keith, go
keep
ahead.
by for the record, my understanding was that we did not reach consensus and we did not vote to require noise monitors in tier 2. I thought the vote was 3-2, but it could have been 5-0 because I think it might have been an agreement. But we definitely did not agree to have noise monitors required for tier 2s.
Right.
Was
I
my
agree.
recollection.
That's my understanding. I don't even know what to say about this. I don't know if maybe we should do what we did before where everybody turns in. Lauren?
Lauren Romaine for the record. So is there any way that we can just put this on a Google Drive? I know you don't like that, but if we all edit and put that information in, it's much easier for the person to make the change, because for me to read through all this and send changes, and for him to read his part and send changes, and then those changes may not, we're actually bringing it back to public, we're voting on it in public. I see no reason why we can't work together on trying to get this fixed. Okay. So we'll just, somebody will put it on the Google Drive, get it to us, and we'll read through and make sure you're in suggestion
So we're gonna
mode.
table this.
Yes.
Well, subject to making corrections and submitting them for approval at the next
Do you
meeting.
vote to table?
Normally, yes. I mean, you just
So I make a motion,
normally-
we table with the approved upon suggestion to fix.
Okay.
Keith Byer, I second.
Okay, I need to take public comment because
No.
it's an action item, right?
You can choose on this one, since it's not a public hearing.
I mean,
You
it's-
can choose not to have it.
Okay, I'm not doing public comment then. Okay, so I have a motion by Lauren, a second by Keith, to table these minutes until further discussion and corrections are made.
We'll work on them on a shared drive and bring them.
And shared, yeah, we'll work on them shared. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now I'll go to item 1. If I can find it.
Madam Chairman, I ask a question of Mr. Strelo.
Sure, go
regarding the
ahead.
minutes. Michael Sloan for the record. Is the minutes still accessible via video recording?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, agenda item number 1, for possible action, discussion on a special use permit application to obtain a Tier 3 vacation home rental permit. The subject application is for a 6-bedroom home, 12-person occupancy, located at 332 Barton Court. The owner is Julie Bachman, who currently has a Douglas County issued VHR permit, account number 084000769. APN 131918414011. Turn this over to Mr. Strelo.
Ernie Strelo for the record. It's been an hour. It's good. On January 20th, Ms. Bachman, who's at the podium, so give us a little bit more information in a minute, began the process of commencing a VHR permit renewal process located at 332 Barton Court in Nevada. She had previously had an occupancy of 16 for 6 bedrooms. The newer permit is 6 bedrooms with a maximum occupancy of 12. She has received approval for her Tier 3 permit on March 6th. Upon the application, I think you get an application, temporary approval, right? Pending the outcome of the VHR Advisory Board decision, this meeting within 180 days from this renewal date. If the special use permit is denied, she can operate as a Tier 2 with 10 occupants. If a Tier 3 SUP is approved, the permit will continue with the operation of the home owned by Julie Bachman, unless the details of the permit are modified, such as occupancy, parking, or other. or the property is sold, right? The property is located up the hill off of, is it North Beverly?
North Benjamin.
North Benjamin. So you're on North Benjamin, it's in the Kingsbury Village. There is 27 of the 245 parcels in that area are VHRs right now. I went through the property. There's it's the whole street is VHRs really. I mean, there's next door neighbors on most of the sides are VHRs. The back patio, the back deck is tiered. It's tiered. It has the elevated deck, right? It's canyon. So the thing to think about is it's granite, and the noise will carry through the canyon, right? So I know there's been some opinions about comments about noise and stuff like that. So there's something to consider when you're talking about it. So there's it's quite an open canyon. The nearest, the house distances are somewhat far apart, but you can hear noise, I think, down the hill. There was a couple noise monitors on the balconies, right? There was 2, I think I saw, right? So there's, there may be some concern that there might need to be more, I think we talked about that. More noise monitors condition might be considered. Here's my suggestion. It's up to you guys. And then lastly, the driveway was 17 feet or so wide, depending on how my fat feet measured it, right? And it's about 20 feet deep. You could fit 2 cars tandem on the driveway. They can't be side by side because there would be no 6-foot egress, so it would be a legal parking spot. So they have to park, on the right side, back to back. That's the longest side. If it's anything different, then it's not proper. The garage fits. It looked like a medium-sized SUVs.
Yes.
I think is what we talked about. So, like if you have a long bed Dodge truck, you probably could fit that in, or a big Escalator or something like that. So, I think that's it. If there's any questions for me.
Thank you, Mr. Strelo. Questions from the board for either staff or the fire department? Michael?
Michael Sloan for the record. So, Mr. Strelo, are you recommending that they have 4 parking spots or 3, including the garage?
They can have 4. I would recommend 3. Because I think the cone will disappear after the meeting. And so I think that they'll end up parking side by side. And so that's just my feeling. That's what I see. So I would probably say 3 would be my recommendation.
My question then would turn to the fire department. Hello. Would you, does the fire department recommend 3 or 4 parking spots for this property?
The fire department's gonna defer to the county on their recommendations on this. The fire code doesn't deal with driveways, that's why I'm gonna defer to the county on that. The fire code deals with public right-of-ways, and so the sidewalk, the street, where the public is where the fire code deals with. If we were to enter to, say, to rescue somebody from a medical emergency, more than likely somebody's gonna be awake and we're gonna be able to move cars if we had to. If there's a fire, we don't park a fire truck in a driveway to fight a fire. But the fire code specifically does not deal with, say, a driveway unless we're talking a long, half-mile long driveway or a driveway that's got a significant portion to it that we have egress issues to. Does that make sense?
Ernie Strelo for the record. I will help you on this. The code is 10 feet or 9 feet wide by 20 feet deep, right, as a parking spot, right? It's 17 feet wide, right? So it's by the measurement, right? So 3 would be it, with 2 in the garage and 1 in the driveway.
Oh, and I believe you're saying that it could accommodate 4, your recommendations.
Depending on the size of the car, right? And that's the trick, right?
That's true.
And honestly, I feel that, and from what I've seen driving through a point, other areas, is people park side by side in the driveway. And the code states that there has to be a 6-foot egress to be able to get emergency people, there has to be an emergency lane in the driveway. So you can get a cart in there, whether he says he has a code or not, that is the county code. So, that's it.
Any other questions from the board for staff or the fire department? Keith?
Mr. Straylock, a couple of comments. One, you mentioned a number of things are on file. It would be good to start a process to give us more information. You say insurance is on file. It would be good to say insurance is on file and then list the code that it complies with. It is $1 million. It is a Nevada thing. And so the second thing is the second month in a row that there are the parts you can't read.
Okay. So, Ernie Stradle for the record. So the first part, I haven't added the insurance information because I was told not to, but I will. I can add information.
I'm not asking if you add the
Any
policy.
relevant information.
I'm asking you to add descriptors.
I will add. I'd be happy to.
Yeah. Okay.
The second thing is on the readability. I've tried to fix that. In the backup of each of these packets, you'll see Chris and Eric sent me fresh copies of the fire department stuff, right? So it's readable. The HDL stuff we're bringing in-house. We're having a hard time with HDL giving us clear copies of stuff. We are bringing that in-house. We're in a process right now, mapping out ACA modules internally so we can get HDL out of that process, right? Because it's hard to read.
Okay.
And I tried a lot trying to get it clear.
Yeah, I mean, whatever we can do, and, because, and again, we didn't get the supplemental one last night, but I mean, you just can't read the stuff. And I would suggest you create a standard document index. There's some information, it seems like we're trying to save space, and maybe that's why these things are getting unreadable, but then some of the same information, page 49 and page 60 are the exact same thing. My other question is, the emergency contact is Ms. Bachman, and the address is 332 Barton Court, and all this stuff. So how did we approve a Tier 2 permit not knowing where she resides when she's renting?
It's an interesting question.
Well, that's a good question.
I'm sorry.
I'd be happy to tell you.
No, I'm not asking the question of you yet. My question is, how did we, as the county, approve it? I'm obviously going to ask the question for Tier 3 consideration. My comment really is, how did we approve the Tier 2? Or how did we, because this is already operating as a Tier 3, how did we get there if we don't know where the emergency contact lives while the unit is occupied? And I guess that's a question for the future. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
That's good, let's do that in the future. Okay, if there aren't any more questions for staff or the fire department, Ms. Bachman, you could make your, did you have?
I did have one, I'm sorry,
sorry.
and I was realizing that maybe it's since Mr. Strelo, Warren Romaine for the record, since Mr. Strelo did the look in that, if I get on page, starting with the pictures, 58, there's a picture of the garage, and I guess my concern was, and especially now it makes it more important, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of room for a car beside it, so I was wondering what those dimensions were.
Yeah, so the dimensions they were a little over 23 feet wide in the garage. The garage, when I took pictures yesterday, and I'm sorry I didn't have time to get pictures to you guys today. The garage looked a little cleaner than what I see in the picture here. There was one car to the left of it. You can see it looked like you can fit another car in there. That was my observation.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bachman, if you want to make your statement, and then we'll ask you questions.
Sure. I would just answer Mr. Byers' question first. I live down by Kale Meadow, so I'm within a 10-minute drive of the property. I have had a vacation rental permit, Tier 3, since, I believe, March of 2020. I have not had any complaints filed against me. I don't believe for parking, for noise, for garbage, because I do live 10 minutes from the property. I handle the garbage myself. I go up, I make sure whenever renters leave, it's properly cleaned in the garage, out on Thursday mornings. I did have a local resident reach out to me for my contact information via VRBO, and you can't exchange it via VRBO. So I gave her my office number, told her to contact me there. I gave her my text. She seemed satisfied that she can contact me at any time she feels that there might be a problem. I do have the noise monitors. I have purchased a third one. The decks are relatively small, so I don't think each deck probably needs more than one noise monitor, but there was a deck off of the master. I kind of assumed only 2 people would be out there at a time. That did not have a noise monitor, but I did purchase one on Monday, or I believe Tuesday, at Mr. Stralo's suggestion. I have lived in Tahoe for 27 years. I work here. I have been next to vacation rental homes. The one next to me was a vacation rental home for the 10 years I lived in my home. I am aware of the issues. I'm cognizant of them, and I am respectful to my neighbors. I want to be able to be somebody who has a vacation rental home in their neighborhood that they feel actually respects their needs as neighbors as well. And I think I've been pretty good at doing that, seeing as there haven't been any complaints. And I would strive to continue to do that. And anything that this board required of me or asked of me, that my neighbors asked of me, I would be willing to bend over backwards to get it done. And I would ask for the 4-car parking. I mean, it's to the discretion of the board. There is room. If you take a look at the driveway, it's sort of like a deck. It's not an asphalt driveway. So people are hesitant to park side by side on that driveway, to be perfectly honest with you. And most of the time, people will park over to that one side of the driveway, simply because I don't know why, but they're hesitant to park side by side on the driveway.
Thank you. Questions from the board? For Ms. Bachman?
Keith Barr for the record. Ms. Bachman, one of the things, Mr. Stralo, we made me think about the future is to actually find some way to find the ads of these. I don't know if we've ever thought about that. But is your ad $1 million views at reasonable price? It looked like it was your place.
Yes.
In this, if you look at about the location, it says, at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac with plenty of street parking in non-snow removal conditions. And you said you're aware of some of the issues, and parking has been, honestly, I believe if I just coagulate all of the comment we've had, probably parking is before noise is before trash. Parking is number one. And in your ad, I can't find anywhere in it that talks about parking permits at all. And so it looks like you don't advertise that you have 3 or 4 or whatever places in your ad. And then it was concerning to me that you say you can park in the street.
And I can modify that ad. I have not changed that since it went up in 2020. I had previously had parking, I can't recall for how many, but I think it was significantly more than I currently have.
Because I guess in Airbnb, they ask you a bunch of questions, right? And so one of them is parking facilities, and it even lists free street parking, which is not paid, so that's an accurate statement, but yeah, it was, there. I think that's all I have.
Okay. Questions? Lauren, Michael?
I've got one, and I'm thinking it's not from Ms. Bachman, but for fire department, real quick, on page 59, there's a picture of one of the bedrooms, because I think we got 7 bedrooms. One picture was in there twice.
6 bedrooms.
Well, there's 7 pictures of bedrooms in the packet, but if you go down to the one that has the bunk beds, do you have a picture of that by any chance on 59? And my question to you is that the bunk beds are up against the window, and I'm not sure what's on the side behind you. And I just wasn't sure if that's gotten resolved somehow.
Yeah. I see what you're looking at about blocking the X. Chris Roulette for the record, Tahoe Douglas Fire. I see what you're looking at with that appears to be blocking the window. I know that when we go in and do our inspections, if they are blocking a window, we make them move them so that they're not. I can't tell on that picture if there's room to get through there adequate or not.
I was not asked to move them, so that's all I can tell you. I don't know much more about that.
This is Ernie Strela for the record. Are these white bunk beds?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I took additional pictures when I was at the house. It looks like about 1.5 feet or 2, distance between the bunk beds.
So the head of the bed is not up against the window?
It is
You're
against
saying
the
it's-
window.
It is against the window?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can always pull them back, as you can see from the photograph, there's about 1 foot or more, I can pull them back. Nobody ever expressed to me that that was an issue, so that wouldn't be that hard.
I'm thinking it should be a requirement, is that, because we need to be able to
Yeah,
have people
they're-
get
they're-
out of the window.
People to get out and us to be able to get in, so there is a requirement for that. I don't recall the beds being against the window. It's been 2 years since I've been to this specific house, but Eric had went before that. But we do normally make it a habit to ask people to move beds away from windows so people can get out and we can get in.
More.
Yeah, hang on a second. And so then, Ms. Bachman, you're the emergency contact, correct?
Correct.
And this is not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on current events and things that have happened. You actually will answer your phone 24 hours, 24/7.
Yes, I mean, my ringer is on.
You don't put your phone on a countertop and leave it in another room when you go to bed?
No, it's next to my bedside table, so it is there.
Okay.
And
It's not a reflection on you.
yeah, no, I will answer it.
Okay.
I would say to anybody, probably not a bad idea, if you have the owner's cell phone number, to shoot a text first. Everybody gets spam calls at all hours of the day and night, so if I know you're trying to contact me about the house, that would be helpful.
And then you were saying trash, you go up and make sure you've got bear boxes.
Correct, I have 2 that each hold 3 cans each.
And they come and pick up on Tuesdays?
Thursdays.
Thursdays, I'm sorry, Thursdays. And then if you have people that leave on Sunday?
What I instruct my renters to do is put only food waste in the bear bins. Any cardboard, glass, aluminum cans, or plastic, they have to wash and put in recycling bags in the garage. There's a $10 per bag charge if I open up the bear boxes and it's full of cans. So far, people have been pretty good about cleaning the recycling and putting it in the garage. If I go up after they check out on Sunday and I see there's some dirty recycling in there, I will clean it or deal with it myself until Thursday.
And when you take it off property, where do you take it to, like on a Sunday?
I will clean it and leave it in the garage.
Okay.
I mean, if it was really overwhelming, then I would take it down to, I don't think, I'd have to probably go to South Tahoe Refuse on Monday, but I would take it down to South Tahoe Refuse. But for the most part, it's cardboard boxes, glass bottles, and I just put them out Thursday morning with the trash.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I still have a question about this garage. The items in the garage, are those your personal items, like the bicycle and?
That photograph of the garage, the inside of the garage, was taken years ago. So that was when I was living there. So yes, the inside of the garage, none of those personal items are there anymore.
Would make more sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's shovels, there's a snow blower, things like that, but
right. Okay.
That was just to show the size of the garage, but yeah, there's no personal items in the house anymore.
I don't have any more questions. Michael?
One quick question. Thank you for appearing today. Do you manage any other properties?
I do not. I obtained my real estate license and my property manager's license just because I wanted to be compliant with any codes that Douglas County may put into place.
Okay, thank you very much.
Lauren, did you say you had another question? No? Well, then I think we'll just take public comment now. It was a race.
Beat you to it. That'd be your 3rd time. Hi, City Council.
We don't want.
John Evelyn, E-D-E-L-E-N. I'm a tier 0, or did we give that up?
You what?
Did we give that up? Because the last meeting you wanted us to get up and say what tier we were.
Oh. Do
But
you
now
have
it's, now it's we spell out the last name.
Well, because of our technical difficulties.
In reference to, I'm just gonna address Barton Court, because there's 3 vacation rentals right next door to each other now. And the latest one is 337. And I have talked to a neighbor who called the contact number on that, and all they got was smart-ass talk. We're not making noise, and I know that there have been complaints about 335, so I don't want to slander Ms. Bachman about noise, but as my complaint with the VHR complaint line 2 Saturdays ago in relation to the parking, I was directed to give this to Michael Sloan, and that should be in your packet, that I complained about the parking, and that's right in front of Ms. Bachman's house. Now, I am not responsible for determining who owns these cars, but 2 of them had the permits inside, and it says right on the permit, no on-street parking, period. So I don't know where you guys are getting a little slack, you know, well, we're gonna allow some more parking, and I don't think I should be the one that has to determine where these cars came from. Okay, and there was one more around the corner, and it has nothing to do with the guy standing in the driveway, but that's the 4th car on that one court. And then the place that that guy's standing in front of, which is 337, I counted 7 cars on property there. And they left before I got a chance to take their picture. But when I called the VHR hotline, I got smart talk from the girl that, oh, they can park on the street from 9 o'clock to 8 in the morning. And I told the little girl, I says, this is 7:30 in the morning. So there goes that, plus I know your code's wrong. So I don't know what to tell you, but as Ellie and I discussed, this is an incremental problem, and it just piles on top of each other in a very small area. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment regarding item number 1.
We'll sign in again. Dale Roberts. First off, it was mentioned that the bunk beds are against the window. Ms. Stockman said, oh, we can move them back about a foot. Well, I can tell you this. I worked in construction for years. And when you're building a house, your studs are 16 on center, all right? I work with a lot of guys, I'm sure there's a few women, that could not get through 16 inches, much less 12. So think about that one. You say, oh, we'll just push the beds back. There might need to be a different design designation to make that work for her. Now, the next one is, when it comes to measurements again, not to put Mr. Strelo on the carpet here for anything, yet being as how he is a VHR program manager and was going out and verifying things, I mean, I never relied upon my little feet, and he's given measurements for his big feet. So I would say that probably at this point, we should put this on hold for anything until someone can go out with a tape measure, verify sizes, verify how much the car can fit, how many cars can fit, and also, better yet, verify where the actual property line is, and are they parking on the easement of the street, the apron, to give easement from the street and the right-of-way to the driveway itself, because lots of people think their driveway ends at the street, where in actuality, their driveway may begin 10 feet away from the street. And anytime you're parked in an easement, technically you're in the street. So I believe this all should be tabled for a while longer until you actually can verify some of this stuff. Thank you.
Have you heard in response to any of the comments?
Let me
my
finish
public-
with public comment, and then we'll get back to you.
It was mentioned that there's numerous VHRs in that area. I think Kathy Oyster, last name Oyster, O-Y-S-T-E-R. I think Mr. Byer suggested there were 3 in the immediate vicinity, or maybe you. Oh, Strelo, Mr. Strelo. So I'm looking at Airbnb right now, and there is a rental. It's got 2 Douglas County permit numbers on it, by the way, the old one as well as a new one. This one says space for 6 vehicles. So, you know, I think it is important that when you're evaluating these special use permits and your tier 2s, that you're actually requiring as part of your code that you're writing for the members of the community desiring this, this pleasure to use their property as such, that it also includes the promises by the county to protect us. How are you going to do that? Has anyone looked at the websites? Yeah, you can change them in the blink of an eye. She could change it, she could move it, and then she can move it back, and then she can change it back. Because clearly, no one's looking, except for one day when the fire department comes out. This is not okay with me. There needs to be a moratorium on all VHRs at this moment until you can figure this out. It'll save you guys a lot of hassle. But most certainly, we shouldn't be adding new ones that are going to exacerbate the issue. It's just not fair to the community that's trying to live. And as far as a medium SUV, how many people do you think really can fit in one of those? How many people are expected the maximum occupancy, sir? I think it's 16. 12 for a tier 3.
For this one.
For this one, okay. So maybe you could get a medium size, but you're not going to get, there's just no way that you're really going to see that. And as far as the monies brought in by these tier 3s, most people get vacation rentals so that they can eat and play games at home with their family. It's the #1 reason to use a VHR.
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Is to spend time with your family. Probably not spending a lot around town.
Is there any more public comment?
I agree with all of that. I think that when they're submitting permit applications, they shouldn't have stuff that's 10 years old or 5 years old. They should be permitting.
Can you say your name?
I'm sorry, Linda Dengler, D-E-N-G-L-E-R. Thank you. I think that these should be brand new permits. I think every picture should represent what it is. I think they should have to put in the ad that they're showing and tell us how to see it so I can look at it when they change it, because they do. And the majority of ads that I've seen and looked up say they're for 8 or 9 people when 8 is allowed, and then they show 14 beds. Sleeping spaces. So guess what they're really saying? Come on, 14 people, we want to see you. So I agree with Kathy. We need to put this on hold until we really get clear, because I've seen the applications, other ones, and they're all old stuff that don't make any sense. And I go back to the special use permit, because the planning department is required to hold meetings, and I don't know if you guys get to qualify as the planning commission, but you aren't the planning commission. And they're supposed to hold special meetings and let us be notified, all of us ahead of time. This is required in the special use permit. And then at the end, here, and the proposed use will not generate pedestrian or vehicular traffic which will be hazardous or conflict with existing anticipated traffic. I'm sorry, when you bring 3 or 4 extra cars to that building, which maybe would have a family in it with 2 cars, if they were living there, you're generating more traffic. You're generating more pedestrians. You're bringing people into my neighborhood that I don't know who they are or how safe they are. And so that's a part of the special use permit. And the other thing on the special use permit is at the very end, It has to go to, every detail of this has to go to the planning commission, and the planning commission has to sign off on it. So none of these actually qualify if you're not doing the special use permit process, which is right here on the phone. And the noise level stuff is a bunch of baloney. I mean, we call the cops to come about noise, and they call the code enforcement, who calls the emergency contact, who calls the place and says, tell them to not make noise, so they don't violate them. So every owner that ever stands up here, or real estate manager says, we don't make noise, I'm sorry, but they do, and we turn it in, and nobody does anything about it, and they make sure they don't do anything about it.
30 seconds, Lynn.
So, you know, how can, code enforcement really doesn't enforce any of these codes, and I think we have to have it so there's real code enforcement before we go forward with anything else, because they state they don't do it. You know, they don't count the people, they don't bother with the cars parked on the street, they don't protect the egress. You know, if we don't have that, why should we have this? This needs to have codes that are enforced, or be just stopped until it does. Thank you.
Ellie Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R. Thank you for the readable fire report on this one. Thank you for identifying other adjacent VHRs. This is a lot of work for everybody. Lots of us are looking at those ads. Some of the members, people like me, I think it is a good idea that maybe that will be added to part of the permitting process in the future. We're just trying to nail this down, that they should supply the ad. Then that becomes your documentation for a potential violation against the three. We're just trying to rack and stack to help this process come along. If it's gonna be 3 violations, this could be 1, parking could be another, noise would be the 3rd, you're revoked. Again, these would be suggestions at the next meeting. I don't want to get off task here. The P.O. box provided is not a physical address. That should have been noted, and anybody can have a P.O. box anywhere. You can pay for it. So again, a physical address on this specific one was not provided. I know that's can be remediated, but remedied, and did that one. Size of the garage, the size of the SUV also could be noted as part of your parking analysis. I think we're allowing the program manager to make the decision. Let's not question it. Let's not have the fire department have to be involved, or anybody else. Maybe we need to buy Mr. Strelo a laser-guided scale. So when he goes into, I mean, you know, a Christmas present from the county, which will help some of the public understand your analysis instead of feet size. Again, I'm sure it's not done that way, but I'm just adding some levity to this. Again, the false advertising is an issue, and also in the assessor record, it says this is an LLC. So again, that always needs to be taken into consideration if a future application's going to come in with just the applicant. I'm not saying this one's name comes in. Again, we need to be real sensitive to that LLC on the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Any other public comment regarding item number 1?
Why he's signing this is Ernie Strelo for the record. I actually do have a little bedroom.
6 feet.
I won't say the feet anymore.
6 feet don't do you any good. You gotta get a longer one.
I have a little electronic tool.
Jared Ciavola, C-I-A-V-O-L-A. I live in the vicinity of the vacation rental in question here, plus the other ones that are in the area. And Mr. Strelo, you're completely right. All those houses are way up on the point of the hill. Everyone down on Andrea Drive, I can hear word for word conversations on the deck, hooting and hollering, Bluetooth speakers, drones flying over my deck. The bottom line is a tier 3, 12-person vacation rental is nothing more than a party home. You know, it may not be that to every resident. They may be quiet and respectful, or renter, I mean, but it happens all the time. I hear it all the time. Bluetooth speakers. I've heard people out on the deck the last 2 nights. I hear it all the time. So I just don't think tier 3 is anything we need in our quiet, respectful neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment regarding item number 1? If not, I will bring it back to the board here and,
I think you should respond.
what?
She raised her hand.
Oh, you're right. Ms. Bachman, you, or,
I did.
Oh, you
She
did.
was gonna
Okay.
speak too. Jasper and BREND, Cheyenne Way. I think the one thing that everyone I am talking to and all of my neighbors oppose more than anything are the tier 3s. There's too many people, there's too much noise. We live in the hills and we can hear people half a mile away from us. You have a neighbor dog barking, how far do you hear it? You're getting that same noise. I worked at Lake Tahoe Airport, we did a lot of noise monitoring when we'd have groups that were in the airport and get complaints. And we were, half a mile away over on Washone when we take measurements of the noise that was coming from the airport. And they would measure at 65 decibels a half a mile away. So you can't tell me that noise isn't being heard further than what they say on the noise monitors. I think that you need to come to a point where you say there's too many in too many places. And I want to again express my deepest wishes that you would turn around and not allow 3 rentals in a row. That's just too much for any neighborhood to have to put up with. You're sitting there with a major hotel when you do that. So my feeling is 1 per street, 2 per street, but not next to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? I think Ms. Bachman, you had one more statement you wanted to make.
Yes, I just wanted to address a couple of the issues. Somebody asked to table this until there were measurements of the driveway. I had provided those. I went out at the request of the county, remeasured the driveway, and bought myself a 40-foot long measuring tape. So the county does have those. I'm happy to do it again, but those are there. The setback on this driveway is built like a deck. There's a very clear delineation between the road and the driveway. It goes from asphalt to wood. So I don't think there's really much of a question of where the driveway begins and the setback is. With respect to the noise complaint, that there's been noise the last 2 days, my house has been vacant since last Sunday. So it could not have been coming from my house. And I've been up there. I'm the only one who's there other than Mr. Strelo in the last week. So that noise was not coming from my house. I do have the monitors. If they go off, my check-in instructions discuss specifically, please be courteous to the neighbors, please be aware, you're in a bowl, keep the noise down. There are noise monitors. You will be asked to leave if you violate the noise ordinances. I inform my renters what the noise ordinances are. And then if the noise monitor goes off or I receive any contact from my neighbors, I do address the issue immediately. And I did have to do that recently. Went out, dealt with the renters myself, and there was no more issues or complaints after that. I have not seen these pictures of the other cars on the street. I can't say whether they're from my house or whose house they're from, so I can't really address that. I wish if there was an issue with the parking, somebody would contact me. I mean, I think that's the idea with these VHRs, is that you have a receptive homeowner, contact that person. I've not seen these pictures, and I've never had anybody complain to me about the noise or the parking. So I would ask the court to grant my Tier 3 permit. I, for a year, had a 16, or 2 years, had a 16-person occupancy, and I try to be an active, involved, respectful VHR owner, and I think I have been, since the board doesn't have any complaints regarding the typical issues, which are noise, parking, and garbage.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman.
Can I ask Ms. Bachman a question?
You have a question?
For Ms. Bachman.
Oh, Ms. Bachman.
Ms. Bachman, I'm trying to find it. I remember it from the test. We all did, by the way, passed the same test you did, which is, I think, admirable for the county. You mentioned you had a complaint recently.
Not a complaint. Somebody reached out to me and asked me for my cell phone number so they could contact me if they had issues.
Okay, thank you.
make a quick comment.
Lawrence?
I had a question for the, I
Well,
thought it was
would-
coming back to
okay,
us,
so
I'm sorry.
I am bringing it back to us
Okay.
now, so, but thank you, Ms. Bach.
But now that she's made other statements, can we speak to them?
Well, she's the permit holder, so they're allowed to make statements.
Okay.
Just a quick comment, though.
Let's bring it back to the board. Comments, questions, thoughts?
Lauren Rooney, for the record, can I get clarity on, I mean, I'm looking at this map here with all the lines and stuff, and there's cars parked on the street. So are we allowed to park on the street in the middle of the day? Is there a certain time frame where you're not supposed to park? What's the?
I'll defer to Mr. Lawrence in the back.
Mr.
Of the parking?
Oh, parking.
Repeat the question.
Are we allowed to park on the street?
If it's public street, that's correct.
Okay, what do you mean by public street? Because the HOA owns it, the GID owns it? or-
If the street does not have no parking on it, you can park on the street. It's considered a public street, so you can park on the street
During the day?
during the day
Okay, and when does day end?
at 7 o'clock at night.
It is 7 o'clock, so set from 7 to
So 8 in the morning.
8 in the morning, you cannot park on the street.
Well, I can't quote that. That would be a law enforcement question. All I know is that code enforcement doesn't enforce any parking on the street. Only parking that we enforce is how they're parked on property.
Yeah, I'm more confused than I can. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Have an answer.
It's okay, Madam Chair. Yeah, Sam Taylor for the record, Douglas County District Attorney's Office. In response to your question regarding parking, Mr. Lawrenson's correct, but what he was trying to point out is he doesn't have jurisdiction over parking on the street. So parking on the street is not necessarily a code enforcement issue. It is a DCSO issue. Under Title V of the Douglas County Code, the DCSO is the only ones authorized to issue parking tickets for public parking on the street. I think the fire department might have some authority if somebody's parked in front of a fire hydrant, but that's a different matter. I mean, they're all over the place, so. In addition to that, Tier 3s also have different requirements in terms of parking. If you recall, during the Kaltoff case, the judge made it quite clear that we could not, as a condition of basically examining Tier 2s, limit parking to solely on the property. It was also, and we couldn't limit occupancy based on parking. But with Tier 3s, we do have that opportunity to examine parking, and it's the reasonableness of parking on site that you are charged with examining and determining whether or not it is sufficient.
So I guess my question is, as far as any advertising goes, there's no reason to advertise that there's street parking, because basically the person's coming to stay at your house, and if they stay at your house, they're gonna be there overnight, which there is no street parking. Right? Overnight. What happened?
No,
Okay.
well, I'm sorry.
So what I'm saying is, as far as an ad goes, there's no reason to mention the fact that there's on-street parking, because you're coming to, the ad is for that home, to stay in that home. You stay in that home overnight, there's no on-street parking at night.
And I'm sorry, that's not mine, sorry.
Say your name.
Sorry, Keith Byer, that's not what I took from that. My took is that we have absolutely no ability to regulate parking, because we heard from the sheriff
Yeah.
that if there's parking allowed, there's parking allowed. So unless there is a no parking on your street, the DSO is not going to enforce it, and code enforcement's got to enforce it. So if there's parking on the street, you can bring 17 cars, and no one is going to be able to enforce that. The only reason you would advertise it is because it's required you to advertise it in the code. There's no, go ahead. Did I misunderstand something? I hope I did, but that's what I understood.
I would like to clarify one point, what you said, everything was correct, except for one tiny point. In the context of Tier 3s, you can control and discern where parking is going to occur with respect to Tier 3s.
How do you enforce it?
Well,
Yeah.
that's.
It's an unenforceable requirement. Okay.
Well, no.
We'll agree on that. Yeah?
There is a means to enforce it. And it came up in the context, if I may, the same Taylor again for the record, came up in the context of a comment that was made earlier by an individual who had observed 2 cars parked in front of a house with parking permits in them, which specifically said that you're supposed to be parking on site.
Yeah.
So
So
that is something that code enforcement could note, and that can actually work as quote unquote an enforcement action that can be undertaken against the owner of the home. Because they are responsible for making sure that their renters park in the appropriate spot.
Keith Meyer again. So as long as people are smart enough to not have the placards, it's unenforceable.
Well, and
I mean, it's
Probably from a practical standpoint.
from a practical standpoint, parking is unenforceable. Okay.
Lauren?
okay, so first of all, I mean, my whole thing was I don't think we need parking passes on driveways, so I would say we get rid of them, but you're saying it's the only way we can enforce it, and I'm sorry. We have a rule that there's no on-street parking from hour 7 to 8 in the morning, and there's no enforcement.
Unenforceable.
Why is it unenforceable?
Because the street is parking, and code enforcement does not enforce the street. And the sheriff said they do not. It goes back to our conversation with them when they were standing over here. That was my dilemma, is that we keep talking about if we had enforcement. What I heard was, we have the enforcement we can have, and I understood it. By the way, I'm not criticizing DSO, I'm not criticizing code enforcement. They do what they do. Our code enforcement is not, is not the sheriff. They don't look at the street parking, right? If it's on site, they can. If they had 12 cars stacked on top of each other in the garage, they could. But they don't do street parking. The sheriff, as long as street parking is allowed, they don't enforce it.
But it's not allowed.
It's not allowed by the code, but not by law.
Time out. Can we have this discussion when we do code revision? Because obviously, in the code, it says no on-site no street parking. So does that need to be removed if that can't be enforced? I mean, those are all the things we have to talk about at a code meeting.
I will pare down my conversation and my dismay at this conversation.
I have all the same dismays.
I'm finally catching up with YouTube, so I'm just newly dismayed. So that makes it a little tougher. And so I guess so we have the ability to say there's 3 parking spots. Those 3 parking spots, okay. So we have the ability to do that, and that the ad cannot say no on-street parking.
Yes, Sam Taylor again for the record. I would say that's technically correct if you grant the tier 3 permit.
If we did, okay,
Yes.
gotcha, okay.
Likewise, if it goes back to a tier 2, we can't say that.
I would say technically that is.
That's correct. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay.
I'm a technical guy.
All right.
Let's,
Because your point was well taken about the enforceability of it.
yes.
So I wanted to go back, if I could, to the.
We have to state your name.
Chris Roulette for the record, Tahoe Douglas Fire. So the comment about the bedrooms and the egress. So as we're doing inspections, we do make sure that there is adequate egress. I would be more than happy to go back to this house to look at the bedrooms to make sure that it's adequate. When we say adequate, we are looking that a firefighter is able to get through there with a tank on their back, both in and out of a window. That's why there's window requirements. I would make sure that it at least meets the minimum window requirements in the International Residential Code, IRC 310, which is at least 20 inches wide. Beyond that, I can't really say, okay, I need to make sure that this is 3 foot wide. We can make sure that it at least meets those at the time of our inspection.
Okay, thank you. How would you like to proceed? Does anybody want to make a motion with some of these comments attached, or does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I have concerns. First of all, is you have 2 properties. You know my 100-foot rule, which is the Keith Fire rule. It's not in code. You have 2 properties within 60 feet. Mr. Strelo mentioned, because of the granite, the amount of noise that the decks are prone to. The ad currently for this property is a violation of the code. The code does require you advertise the number of spots available. Not only does it do that, it encourages street parking. So I'm in favor of rejecting this application for Tier 3 and to have it remain a tier 3 and have it remain a tier 1.
Two.
Is that a motion?
Have it rejected as a tier 3, correct? But I moved that, yes, I moved. I moved that we reject this application for tier 3.
Thank you, that was very concise. Do I have a second?
I'd like to make comments before I.
I'll make a second so we can make a comment.
Okay, you'll make a second, okay, discussion.
Madam Chair, thank you for allowing me to make some comments. I appreciate Ms. Bachman for coming today. I think she actually is a very good and responsible owner. But the density on this court, there's a 4 at the end that have VHR permits that I've counted. There's 6 total homes on the street, and even though it's Mr. Byers' rule is not law, I kind of go with it. It's just a little tight. The density I have a problem with, but you can't control the. It's either going to be a tier 3 or tier 2. So I would, even though I think Ms. Bachman's doing her best, I think she's a good property manager, I would not be in favor of a tier 3 at this time.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments?
Yep. Romaine, for the record.
Okay.
I would like to amend the motion to add that the fire department does take a look at that bedroom and again clears it as a bedroom. I'm sorry.
The motion was to reject the tier 3, so if.
I understand, but even though it's a tier 2, we still need to make sure that bedroom is.
But you don't have jurisdiction on tier 2s.
Sure we do. It's the fire department wants to go back and fire department wants to go back and take a look at it because of the pictures they've got.
Well, I think the fire department can do that. Sam Taylor, again, for the record, Douglas County DAs, the fire department can do that on their own, regardless of whether or not you approve this or not. But because if you disapprove this, it would take it out of your jurisdiction. Therefore, the fire department would just be able to do that on their own.
Okay. Lauren Romaine, for the record, will you go and, will the fire department go and take a look at that bedroom?
That's fine, the fire department's been.
Yes, I will work.
Not to
I'll
say
work
that
it
there
out
is an
with you.
oversight.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
let's
I withdraw my
to order here.
my amendment.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Byer to reject this tier 3 application. I have a second by, who seconded? You.
I did.
Lauren Romaine. All those in favor of rejecting this application signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, thank you. How's everybody doing? Do you need a break or should we go on to the last chapter?
I'm fine anyway.
5 minutes?
Let's take,
5 minutes.
come back here at a few minutes before 3, 5 to 3.
And she admitted that she.
Okay, where are we?
The transfer.
She said.
We're trying.
The guys.
Yeah,
We'll see where it is. I don't want to be proven out again.
Okay, you got it, file it.
Bring the meeting back to order, please.
It's better now.
Is nothing coming out?
Well, that was my goodness.
Christmas is coming up, we're getting a gavel for you.
We have to get a big gavel for her.
Order!
That's your job.
Okay.
So hit me with it.
Bring the meeting back to order. Everybody's here. So let's move on to the last agenda item, number 2. For possible action, discussion on a special use permit application to obtain a Tier 3 vacation home rental permit. The subject application is for an 11-bedroom home, 22-person occupancy, located at 343 Tramway Drive. The owner is James Thulin, who currently has a Douglas County issued VHR permit, account number 084-00984, APN number 1319306270877027. I'll turn this over to Mr. Strelo.
Okay, Ernie Strelo for the record. This one's a little confusing for me, so we'll kind of work through this. So, Mr. Thulin, James Thulin, began the process of commencing the VHR permit renewal process for the property located at 343 Tramway Drive, statewide. Here it says occupancy for 26 for 11 bedrooms was the previous permit. The new permit for the Tier 3 would be 11 bedrooms, 22. There is a temporary 180-day approval in effect right now for Tier 3. It looks like it was issued on June 29th, pending the outcome of the board's review. In our notes, that was up until yesterday, we didn't have proof of insurance, but we have that now. We'll talk to that. The VHR Advisory Board may approve the application to obtain the Tier 3 special use permit with maximum occupancy of 22 persons for 343 Tramway. Given the required findings have been met, given the contents of the staff report and the attached documents and public comment. And subject to the condition that applicant works with the staff to ensure that noise monitors are installed. And we'll talk about that in a second. Alternatively, in the event the VHR Advisory Board believes the Tier 3 permit requirements have not been met, the VHR Advisory Board may deny the application to obtain a Tier 3 special use permit with maximum occupancy of 22 people at 343 Tramway. Okay, so I actually went to this property. It's in the Tramway Village area by Heavenly, so it's right kind of across the street from the lift, down the street. Some of you guys may have driven by there. It's the top half is 345, the bottom half is 343. I went to 343 because that's what all the stuff said. And I went through 343 and I didn't see 11 bedrooms. There was, I think I counted 6 or 7 bedrooms. And I went through the property, I think it was 3 different levels. I didn't really see much on the noise monitors when I went through that. The cleaning crew is the one that was showing me the property. The room, it's a clean property. It seemed to have the necessary signage and stuff. When I was leaving, I noticed that there's no way to go to the top half of or at least they didn't show me. There's a way to go to the top half, which apparently is what the 322 rooms are. the top half of the building at 345, inside the building, you have to go outside and go up the stairs, right? So I was a little confused on that. So I took pictures, you know, like I said, I didn't get a chance to see the top because I didn't want to get into the top. But apparently that's what constitutes this big structure, the 11 rooms. And it may be the owner or somebody's here to talk to that, because I'm a little confused.
I'll explain.
And then like I said, the insurance and Mr. Haynes and myself, we kind of looked at the insurance yesterday and today, so we're comfortable with the insurance part. Thank you for jumping through hoops, it looks like, to get that taken care of. You know, it is in some people call commercial district, I guess, ski resort or whatever you want to call it. It's right there. I can see the purpose of it. You know, if you throw a bunch of people in it, there's skiing, there's a ski resort, and I think that's kind of what the purpose is. I did take some pictures of different areas. There's you know, certainly multi-unit condos and stuff on both sides that some of you guys might have saw. That's kind of what that neighborhood is. It's basically the ski resort area, right? Let's go skiing and bring 10 or 20 people up and go skiing. So that's just kind of what it is. But I was just confused with the property.
Would you like me to explain?
And so I'm done.
That's okay.
Okay,
I'll hand it over to you.
Ms. Embler, if I may, I can speak to the insurance.
okay.
So initially what was presented to the
You
county.
have to say your name.
Oh, sorry, thank you. AJ Haynes from the DA's office, Hames. Initially what was presented to the county was an umbrella policy for $2 million, and it wasn't clear from that umbrella policy what specifically this property was insured for, and there was some back and forth. Eventually, we received some documentation that there was $1 million of liability coverage for this specific property, but then it wasn't clear whether or not that coverage applied to personal injury. And so it appeared from the documents we were provided initially that personal injury was excluded, which would violate the code. And then, but there was a designation that short-term rentals were covered by the policy. Subsequently, we received the entire policy, which was numerous documents, which I did go through, and although the terms in there defined it a little unconventionally, at least to my eyes, I was able to review it and confirm that personal injury is covered, so there is $1 million of liability coverage for that property. It does apply to short-term rentals, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to defer to the board members first to go. For Michael, would you like to ask? This would be questions for staff or the fire department.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for deferring to me first. Mr. Strelo, you listed on page 99 of the packet, you know, the adjacent residences, and you listed 5 of them. But there's one address at that same location that I think it's 345 that's not listed. Is there a reason why it wasn't listed?
Ernie Strelo for the record. No, I don't know why it's not listed on here. It's right above it. Yeah,
and
it's the same owner.
Same owner.
If I could just explain the building, maybe it'd make it easier for everybody to understand. Would that be okay? Or I'll wait until you tell me to.
Is that good with everyone? Okay, yeah, because I think a lot of the questions are about the building itself.
Okay. It was one.
So can you step up to the lectern and sign your name and state your first and last name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Judy Bray, B-R-A-Y, and I am employed by Mr. Thulin, the owner of the building. I'm here by myself now because Mr. Thulin is in the hospital in LA. He was in a motorcycle accident and not in real good shape right this moment. Is progressing, but it's not real good right now. So this building was originally one unit, or 4 units, I guess you would say. They were 4 apartment buildings or condos. When Mr. Thulin built it, he turned it into 2 units. So the top unit, which is 345, which is a separate APN, is a 4-bedroom unit. It also has been permitted as a tier 2 because it is only 4 bedrooms. The bottom unit is 11 bedrooms, and Mr. Strelo didn't see, because it's quite, it's one of those buildings, Chris knows, he's been in it. There are stairways on both sides, so you can get in from either side, and you can go to the bedrooms that way. It does have access, you can get to all 11 bedrooms through the interior also. The 345 has its separate entrance upstairs, so that is why it looks a little confusing, but it's 11 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms on top. Does that answer the questions, or can I be a little one?
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, Madam Chair, may I ask a question? Are both units intended to be comprised of the tier 3 SUP that is
No.
before us today? It's just the 11 unit?
Yes.
Okay, that's one.
I guess maybe at this time we can ask some questions to you. And let me just get your name one more time, because I know you spelled it.
Judy Bray, B-R-A-Y.
Bray, okay, thank you, Ms. Bray. Okay.
Madam Chair, can I bring a point of order? Is Ms. Bray authorized to speak on the owner's behalf? I mean, I thought there was a Mr. Williams who was representing, I don't know if I'm sorry, I just kind of assumed the owner, but do we have a formal document that says you represent the owner? Or can we get her to sign it and meet? I mean, I don't know if it's a problem or not, but it just, we normally, if normally someone has a representative,
Right.
they sign a piece of paper that could, and it's nothing against you personally, but
No, I understand.
they authorize that because they're speaking on their behalf. But do we have? I don't think we have that in the package. And is it okay for us to continue without it? I guess is a legal counsel question.
First of all, I would ask Ms. Bray, what is your relationship
You have to
to
say
Mr.
your name.
Sam Taylor, Taylor. You can do that, but you can't say no, right?
And it was Chief Meyer who feeded the pool and asked that question. I'm sorry.
Anyway,
Okay.
Ms. Bray, what is your relationship to Mr.
I'm
Thulin?
employed by Mr. Thulin, and I'm a bookkeeper, personal assistant. I have submitted most all these documents, and I'm handling everything for him right now while he's in the hospital. So, but actually having anything in writing, no, I do not have that.
In what capacity are you employed? I mean, specifically, I mean, is it like executive secretary or?
Yes, bookkeeper, accountant.
And there's also a property management.
We do,
company.
and of course, they're in Peru with this week, so everything kind of got so I got left all alone
Okay,
here. So.
anyway, to continue to answer Mr. Byer's question, it would be helpful to have something from Mr. Thulin on record, allowing Ms. Bray to speak on his behalf. Normally, you would have some sort of like engagement letter or some sort of relationship, i.e. hired like a management firm or something to that effect. But if she's an employee of Mr. Thulin, she is authorized to act on his behalf often in his absence in the capacity for which she's employed. That's why I was asking if you're an executive secretary,
Yes.
which is usually a broader sort of category than just simply bookkeeper. If you're a bookkeeper, I might have concerns.
Well,
but-
that's one of the many duties.
Well, maybe it'd be helpful for the record for you to describe the scope of your duties. That would maybe give the board more comfort.
I would like to continue if we can. I just wanted to make sure we can. Yeah.
I don't know that there's a whole lot I don't do for him. That kind of would be easier to say. I do all his. I set up all these permits before we even got property manager. I got or set up all the requirements that we were going to need. definitely meet with him on every meeting that we have with any property manager that we were trying to contract with. I have very,
Do you have, I'm sorry, madam, do you have authority to execute documents on his behalf?
I do, as a matter of fact, I'm doing all his medical, I have all his medical control right now. I'm authorized for that.
Ernie Strelo for the record. From the insurance piece of it, we were getting, Ms. Bray was driving the insurance discussions with the insurance company, and I have those emails. I mean, the insurance company was working directly with her on the coverage for the property, if that helps.
Not as much as you think. I'm more concerned about her authority to execute documents on his behalf, and I think
I can
that.
sign checks, I mean, it's
Yeah.
so,
you can bind the company?
I could, yes.
Yes, so that is the operative sort of language I was looking for. Thank you very much. And I think she can represent him in this capacity.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we weren't.
Yeah, I certainly, I understand.
Yeah, thank you.
I do.
Lauren?
Lauren Romaine for the record. So a couple questions. I'm very confused over the emergency contact. There seems to be names everywhere. So Jerry Williams, Julio Loera, and Amber Fuller, but Amber McDade or something or other. So can you clarify who the emergency contact is?
Julio is our main guy, contact on site. He's there all the time. He's the easiest to contact. Amber is another realtor. Mr. Williams is not so much anymore. He used to be a main contact, but we have ample. We have more than.
So Julio lives on the property? He said he's there all the time?
No,
Okay.
no. He's a local resident here.
So who's the emergency contact?
Julio.
And Amber is the property manager?
Yes.
Okay, and I didn't see their test take, their test results.
Yes.
In the packet. Did I miss it?
Because there was Mark.
I have to say.
I think Mr. Tibet was
Oh, that was,
working for us
that was
also.
another name,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
that one also.
Yeah.
So what's his role in this?
Well, he is a property management company, and he, I guess he's just, we haven't used him very much, but he was going to take over, but kind of decision was
Okay.
made not to have him do that, so.
Does he
but
live in here?
He does, he lives in Tahoe,
okay.
and he does do some referrals.
Okay.
Because
But-
he has some large properties on the California.
The main people are Julio and Amber?
Amber, yes.
Okay, and then I just didn't see their test results.
They're, Ernie Strelo for the record, there is no test results in the packet. Those two people. The people that are in the packet is James Thulin and Mark Tribbett,
Okay.
because that was what was identified.
I also have one.
You have a
and
certificate?
Yes, I have a certificate. Yeah,
I don't know.
I have that, and Julio has one, so, I mean, we all had them, so I can provide them.
I mean, to me, it's a condition of.
They
of
were
approval.
provided as part of the application.
Right.
Okay, so I don't know how they're.
How many kitchens? Can we talk the whole building a second? Because I did see plans, there's 15, it's hard to read bedrooms, but if you can kind of piece together that the word says bedrooms, there's 15 bedrooms in total between 343 and 345.
But try to keep in mind they're two
Right,
separate
no,
buildings.
I understand, but I just want to make sure we're talking the same language. So in the whole building, how many kitchens are there?
There's two large kitchens.
So one is in 345 and one is in 343?
Correct.
Do you ever rent the whole building as one?
Not typically, no.
Because I'm thinking, and I did not print out the things online, it said there are 2 kitchens in one of the online apps.
Well, it goes across, these buildings used to be, I think they went different ways.
Mhm.
So there is 2 kitchens typically, because there's stoves on each side, but it would be like a 40-foot room open here, and I have a kitchen on this side and a kitchen on this side, but they're right next to each other. There are stoves, two refrigerators, two.
So you consider that one kitchen?
Yeah, I guess, but it's one kitchen with.
Is this it?
Yes. Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
large.
yeah, no, I think it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, as far as parking goes, they say there's 8 parking spots, but those are not assigned. They're not assigned to
There
that.
is no sign in the whole village, Tahoe Village.
And in Tahoe Village, how many parking spots do they allow per unit?
There's no assigned parking at all.
Right, and is there a number that Tahoe Village has that they give to units?
No. That's one good thing about Tahoe Village. We have a lot of.
Yeah, Ernie Strela for the record, I've talked to that HOA. You may have been with me. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, can you define crazy?
What does that mean?
So.
There's a lot of parking and it's first in, first out. They don't assign any parking for most of those facilities.
I'm sorry, but my question is, you said there's a lot of parking, there's also a lot of units. Do you know how many housing units there are and how many parking spaces in that area?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm sorry, Keith Byer, again, context.
Mr. Byer, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of the parking lot, but that building itself has a pretty much its own, there's really nothing close to it that would use those parking
Yeah,
spaces.
I'll come back to that, but I interrupted Mrs. Lorraine, so.
Oh.
Mrs. Romaine, so go back to her.
Yeah.
Because I have a question about that too.
Okay, and I think we had Tahoe Village before. My understanding is they have two parking spots per unit, but they don't enforce anything. Okay, so another home had a garage, it had 4, but he still had 2 in common area. They don't enforce it. And I just get a little concerned, and I understand, and I know where this is, and I know that those 8 seem like they're there, but, you know, for that one unit, but it just is frustrating to me because when these things start to overflow, because then they can't find, and then they go down the street further, and then they impact neighborhoods further because Tahoe Village is not taking care of their parking issue, but we can't, if they're not gonna enforce it, I don't know why we would either, and I think I'm done with my questions so far. Thank you.
Could I go next, because I have some comments?
Oh,
Can I
Chris?
comment to that real quick? So if you look at her parking diagram, it shows 8, and as she said, it used to be 4 units. And there is building department permits for the construction. It did get
Split into two units from a 4-plex, because there was 4 meters, electrical meters. So that would be how you come up with the 8.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Keith Byer, and Lauren, I understand that, but at a certain point of time, maybe if it's your HOA problem, I could see it both ways, right? If they're not gonna enforce it, why should we? I could also see it that if I'm a Douglas County resident and they're not gonna enforce it, if you're gonna have a VHR, maybe you ought to force the process to enforce this. And the reason I'm so concerned about it is we are making, to me, this is not in the code, right? And we're now making perhaps a precedent. Because, you know, yes, there's 8 spots, but there's 8, right? This is 2 units. So shouldn't there be 6? Because that top unit needs at least 2. But, you know, I'd like to hear a lot more conversation by all the members before we get into this, but I think we need to take on the fact that we now have one, the HOA does not regulate it, and what happens, right? What happens? I somehow counter that if there's a parking problem, it's also a parking problem for the people in that HOA, not necessarily, but you have safety issues, you have, you know, the public going through there, you could have all kinds of issues. So what do we do when parking's not assigned and the HOA takes no responsibility? Bring as many cars as you want. You know, this is another one that does not mention the parking in their ad as they're supposed to do. So So I just want to kind of react to that.
I stand converted, Lauren
No.
Romay, by the way.
Well, I'm sorry I did that because I'm not
No, no, no,
converted.
don't be.
I'm not converted yet. I just want to hear a broader conversation with that. So the ad does not mention parking, and it is required in the code to talk about parking. And thank you for clarifying the units, because it looked like it was 4 levels, and I had in my mind separated the 2 as well. There's an ad, I believe it's right now, that, about this space says it's 15 bedrooms spread out, by the way. So someone needs to go through this ad because the ad is muddled, right? There's no parking, and it says in the about this space, it says there's 15 bedrooms spread out throughout the property. I'm assuming that's the 11 plus the 4.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's in the ad for this property.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no mention of parking. Not only is it not mentioned how many parking sites are allowed, which, your permit would have, it also says that street parking is allowed. And I didn't know if street parking was the parking spaces we're talking about, but you could interpret street parking to be on the street, not in the stalls, if you follow that. Amber McDade, when you say, because there's so many people, who manages this? Does Amber McDade manage it?
Yes,
And
well,
is
she's part of, she's Realty Boulevard, so she's the realtor.
Okay.
We do have actual Lux Vacation, who also is one of our property managers that.
Well, the reason, let me bring you into why I'm gonna ask the question.
Okay.
Because it sounds like everybody in Tahoe manages this property, right?
Could be.
A property manager, if the owner is not resident, which I haven't heard he is.
He's a resident, yes.
Okay, so, where?
Not at the building, but here, he's a resident in Tahoe.
Okay, so I guess because, if he's not a resident, the manager has to be registered as a property manager, not just a real estate agent. And I was looking for that certificate. So, there's so many, it seems like I said, there's so many people involved in this. Where does he physically live that he is a Tahoe resident?
Right on Granite Crest, which is right off Boulder Court.
Right behind that.
Right,
By Boulder Ski Lodge.
2 minutes away.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor.
Chairman, hey, Sam Taylor, Tayor, for the record. Mr. Wire, are you inquiring whether or not Mr. Thulin is managing the property?
No, what I'm saying is.
Because if he resides here, well, no, but if he resides here and is managing the property, he can manage it himself. But if he is not managing the property and is hiring somebody else to manage the property, that person must be licensed as a property manager.
Right, thank you. I
I'm
misinterpreted that.
And I would also note for the record that I do not believe Lux Vacation is licensed as a property manager, nor any of their employees in Nevada to basically manage property under the Nevada Real Estate Division. I know because I checked.
Realty Boulevard is, and they are the.
Are they a licensed property manager?
Yes.
And have you hired them specifically for that
Yes.
purpose?
Yes,
For this residence?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman, because I had not
did
interpreted it that way. Is Amber Reed an employee of who?
She's Realty Boulevard, she's the property, the owner of property, Realty Boulevard, who is the property manager. And I submitted all that paperwork, so I think you should have that.
Okay. But I'm assuming because of the length of time that you have VHR permits for both units.
Yes.
So you have what are the VHR there? But you never rented under one rental, there'd be 2 separate.
There may
locations.
be, there may be a time when 2 different, 2 families come and they'll come together and they're all the same family, but they'll rent them both separately. They're not rented as one.
Okay, thank you.
But
We kind of got out of kilter here because we didn't have time for staff. Is this owned by a person or a
A person.
Okay, because there's a thing in here that says that there's a trust on file.
Right.
It is a natural person, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is this the one? I don't know if you know the answer to this, and I can't actually explain your ad. This, again, we can never be sure, but you are Lux 15 Blue Diamond VIP Mega Lodge Lake Tahoe Hot Tub Pool?
Yes.
Okay. Your ad says 16 guests, 11 bedrooms, and I was wondering why you had downsized from 22 guests to 16 in your ad.
I can't tell you that. I didn't know that was, I know we changed from, because it was, at one time, they were allowing, the permit said 26.
Right.
So then we.
Yeah, the 16 kind of threw me for a loop, and that's why I started wondering if the building was separated and we had fewer bedrooms, because I just couldn't understand why you were trying to do 11.
No, sir, I can't. I'm not sure what happened there.
Regarding Airbnb, and Airbnb is who Airbnb is, but I don't know if Airbnb really supports our code, because I just started clicking, and maybe you would know, I just started clicking and it would only allow me 16, right? Because Airbnb says 16 occupancy. But then I started adding infants.
You started adding what?
Infants. Because I think in Airbnb, infants don't count as occupants, but I think under Douglas County, they are occupants. So I could actually, and again, you had 16, not 22, but I could do 16 adults, plus I could start adding occupants. So it's not really a question. So my question to you is, Airbnb is not supporting the Douglas County Code. It's not their job to, right? But how do you know if, when you go and advertise for 22, how do you know they don't advertise for 22 and click a couple of infants, they go over our capacity? How do you work with Airbnb since they don't support the definitions of an occupant per the Douglas County Code?
I apologize, but I don't have an answer for that. I don't take those reservations, and I don't,
But it would be, so I guess it would have to be a manual process, because Airbnb would allow you, if you went to 22, Airbnb would allow you to push 22 and then 4 infants, and they would say this is a good booking, right? You would then have to have a person say no.
That would.
Right, say that you could only have 16 and you tried to actually do 20 as the definition. Do you understand my question? So Airbnb, the Douglas County says occupant's an occupant. If you're 1 year old, you're an occupant. Airbnb says infants don't count. So when you put that maximum in there, that's adults for Airbnb, and then they can try to book this property with your maximum occupancy plus infants. They don't support.
I guess any property could do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was wondering how you managed that disconnect.
We only allow 22 max on, that's,
okay.
Like you say, it went down from 26, and I know it went to 22. I don't wish I knew why that said 16.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have to look into that, but
Okay.
I don't.
And who is Sean? It says entire villa hosted by Sean.
Okay, Sean is the owner of Lux Vacay. Sean and Zorka Aguilara, Sean Ward and Zorka Aguilara, they work to help.
Okay, so a management company, Lux
Yes.
Vacation.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to continue? And again, we kind of got order. Mr. Strang, just a comment, and if you tried to I'm an old flow chart guy, right? If you tried to flow chart what you do, we wouldn't have enough room on these walls, right? And I know it is our process that we approve a tier 2, and then if they have more bedrooms, a tier 3. In this situation, I think we should have some kind of tickler. If they don't have the insurance for a tier 3 when they do the tier 2 permit, I think that we might want to consider delaying the tier 3 permit until they do it. If you see my issue here. Now, what I told Lauren is we're kind of in new charter things, and I wish we had a better code for you. I really did. How did you figure out 8? Was that just, it looks like there's 8 close parking spots, or was there some science, or I guess I'm just asking in general. To me, it looked like 8 because there's 8 right there. Is that how you got 8?
We're talking about the parking spots.
Yes, yeah, when they're not assigned at all, and it's kind of like first come, first serve. How did you decide that this was an 8 unit?
It looked like 8 to me, just because it was right in front, there was a dirt berm behind it.
Yeah.
And so there didn't seem like there were any house nearby or any condo nearby that would park there.
Okay.
You know, and walk to it. It just looked like it to me.
Yeah. But now, did you consider the unit above being a separate unit, or were you thinking that was the same?
No, yeah, I thought that was a separate unit.
Oh, you thought it was separate?
Yeah.
So are there 10? And you gave them 8 and then thinking 2 for 345, or were there 8 in total?
I think there was 8 in total, right?
And it's just first come, first
There's 8
served?
in total that are on, that are
Right there.
lined, that are lined.
Yeah.
And then we've added, there's maybe, I know definitely 2, maybe even 3 that they've, since they've been doing all the repaving, that we've got asphalt, I don't know what you call it, with the dirt and stuff to make more parking. So it's kind of on-street, but there is on-street parking there. There are areas where you don't have to park in an assigned spot. So there's definitely more.
Turning straight for the record, so they're diagonal spots up and down on Tramway.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
That's what we talked about earlier, where
You
it
didn't
is.
say your name.
I did.
Yes.
Just checking.
Didn't spell it though.
ST, yeah. Turning straight for the record. Yeah, so there was 8 spots in front of the building. That's what I saw, right? And then I didn't see, I mean, there was other parking, but it was not close by.
It was right adjacent to those 8 spots, right on the right-hand side.
Oh, maybe I didn't see it then, because I didn't walk.
Yeah, it's just, they're further down. So there is plenty of room for overflow, other than the 8 spots.
Say something. Does anyone mind? This is on my mind. I know on page 85, the community manager clearly says it doesn't matter, you can have as many cars as you want. So I think that's where a lot of our confusion is coming. But in front of those 8 spots is a sign that says it's Tahoe Village parking. So it's not specific to that unit, and like you were saying, 8 spots for 11 plus 4 for 15 bedrooms isn't very much parking. That bothers me a lot, and I have to just say this, and then I said I was gonna let you guys go, and I'm sorry, but I have a hard time with this one because it just looks like a hotel. And I just don't feel like that's our job to approve hotels. I mean, just the look of it, it just bothers me. Go ahead, Michael.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. You know, in light, I think Ms. Bray is doing an admirable job, but we just don't have the key players here. We don't have information as to, as to where Mr. Julio lives. We just don't have a lot of information. I'd like to make a motion that we move this special use permit to the next meeting so that we get the key players here and more factual information. So I don't know if I can do that now or not, and it could be rejected. That's fine too. I just don't feel we have enough of the key players here and information to make a decision.
Can I get-
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm agreeable to that as well, without making a motion or anything before public comment. My only concern is, I think we do need a little bit more discussion, because there is more to flesh out here than we've talked about. So here's my next comment, and I'm sorry to kind of steal your Keith Byer, by the way, for the record. We're quickly realizing that this area of Tahoe is different, right? And good, bad, and ugly is just different. It is heavy density, but we don't really understand it. I don't understand it to the depths I would. You know, the information says there are 262 parcels, right? I believe, if I've understood somebody on the committee before, a lot of those parcels are timeshares. Yeah. And we really, before we get too far along, and it is related to this agenda item, right? I may be more flexible on this one because of the area it's in, but before I want to make a precedent of trying to figure out, well, maybe it's good enough for this area, I need to understand this area better. And I would like to know, of those 962, how many are not timeshares? Because I think that changes it. Let's say that it was, the majority were timeshares. I mean, look, let's say 900 were timeshares. Well, that means of the 62 houses, very few are VHRs. Where I think is probably not you see what I'm saying? I need to understand the makeup of housing units in this for a long term, but also to determine this. And so if we do table this for our next meeting, I really need to understand how many of these are a unit owned by somebody who could have a VHR permit, how many do have a VHR permit, and how many are timeshares which don't allow a VHR permit, because it changes the mathematics for me.
Keith, Lauren?
Lauren Romaine. I would also say that I would like to get clarity, and if we can, on this, the manager that's not a Nevada licensed manager company. I would like to get clarification on that before the next meeting, or at least get clarification to Ms. Braze, so that she can talk with the owner about who the appropriate people are. So I don't have that clarification that Lux is not an approved property manager.
Well, it's
And-
real.
Michael Sloan. Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Sam Taylor, TYOR, for the record. In relation to Lux Vacay, and specifically Sean Ward and Zerka Aguilar, none of those three entities and people are licensed property managers in the state of Nevada, or at least they weren't a few months ago. They might have obtained the license in the interim, but I doubt it.
So I guess what I would like to say, before it comes back to us, that I would like for the owner to get clarity on their property manager and ensure that the property manager has the correct credentials to bring this back.
Right, and they can provide that information
Right.
and the license number, the property management license number to us.
I don't know where everything's going that I'm submitting, so, but I would be happy to resubmit because they asked for those forms. So I don't know why we don't have those on file. And I'm sorry, I didn't print out that old thing. I wish I would have now, but yes, I understand that that needs to be clarified, and I will be happy to.
I just don't want it to be a stopping, like a.
No,
so it's something
no,
more-
why-
okay.
no, but Realty Boulevard is licensed in Nevada, and they that's who our contract is with for the property manager.
So the property manager is the property manager, but however, online, Lux Vacay is advertising it, and Sean is the person you contact.
Right.
So if,
And they're acting in that capacity. They are acting as the property manager, but they are not licensed to engage in that type of activity in the state of Nevada.
Right.
So that is a problem, I would say. This is getting Sam Taylor for the record. And the person who actually is the property manager, licensed in Nevada, you contracted to be the property manager, should be the person who's in the advertisement acting as such in that capacity.
right.
So Lux Vacay, you're saying they cannot put an ad, they cannot coordinate an ad to represent a property?
They cannot act in the fashion of a property manager. That's what a property manager does on behalf of an owner. They basically advertise the property, they make sure that basically the trash is taken out and do everything that's necessary to make sure the unit functions properly. That's exactly what a property manager does. And if they're acting in that capacity, then without a license, one, they're violating Nevada law, and then also they're violating our code.
Okay, Michael, did you have some questions?
Well, are we going to table this, Madam Chair? How are we going to proceed with this?
Yeah,
If we're not going to table it, I have a lot of questions, but
Well,
if we
I know, I
are.
have, like last year's permit said 4 parking spots, this year says 8
Yeah,
parking
right.
spots. There's just a lot of confusion on this one for me, and I think for all of us. Shall we move to public comment, and then we can decide as a board what we want to do with this? So, thank you, Ms. Bray. I know that you were sitting in the hot seat,
And
and
it's not
it
an
was
easy time.
unexpected.
You're my best counsel.
Brutal.
Yeah.
All right. Once again, I'll sign in. Gil Roberts for the record. I guess that's,
R-O-P-E-R-T-S.
thank you. Okay. Here we go. Parking, 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 parking. This place has, okay, 15 bedrooms, 8 so-called designated parking lots. Google just drove by 2 days ago, so you can actually look at it. It's very well done. The off-site parking she's talking about, or the little bit that's parallel, is on gravel. It's not on asphalt, and part of it has a snow stake right in the middle of it. And also Tahoe Village. You guys were talking about, Byer was just talking about set precedent and worried about it. Well, 2 months ago, you guys kicked the can around about some place on Tramway across from Stagecoach for so long about 2 parking places in front of a garage, and it just went everywhere forever, and I couldn't make that mean, but I watched every bit of it, and I went back and watched the recording of it. Well, you know, Tahoe Village has no assigned parking. Be quite honest, we know several people, because we sort of live across the way and get all the floats and Jetson from it. All our friends there go, hey, you guys only have 2 parking spots, and if you ever have all your friends show up or something, go park over there, nobody cares. Okay, you guys need to park your RV in your driveway for a week or so. Go park your cars over there, nobody cares. You guys go and get a parking place, you get someplace, 2 parking places, yet they can put 16 people in here, and now people can go park anywhere. So now you go down the street, you give this person extra parking, all right? And now this person's has 12 cars show up with 8 parking spots. Those 4 cars go park somewhere else. Now the extra cars from the place you guys gave 2 months ago, they go park somewhere else. By the time you're done, you've got 36 units, to say for nebulous whatever, 36 places that they all have extra nebulous parking. Well, anyway, now there's 50 nebulous parking places that need to be filled, and there's only 36 of them that you've allotted because everything else is everywhere. I can go up there and park for a week if I want to, and it's only going to take notice if somebody finally goes and calls my car derelict. Then they'll put a notice on it, and maybe a couple weeks later it'll get towed.
30 seconds.
And this is the kind of parking you guys are giving away. So you have to think about that when people go, oh, we've got lots of parking. No, they don't.
Public comment on item number 2.
Ellie Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R. This is the most confusing thing I've ever seen. Knowing that 345 is a tier 2, there's 2 APNs on a singular lot. Are they allowed even to have 2? It's not listed as an LLC. 345 is actively where we don't monitor tier 2s, that's for another day. Tier 2 or 345 is actively on booking.com as of yesterday. I could book 12 people at 345, which we can't monitor. I think this needs to.
Hold on a second. I'm hard of hearing and I need to focus
Yeah,
right
and
now.
and it's upsetting to me too. Thank you so much. There's so many issues with this unique singular property, notwithstanding the area and saying we should be looking at these differently, but this one is mind-boggling. The 2 APNs exist in one building. The assessor record shows the top floor as one APN and the bottom as the other APN, which makes it confusing. The pictures show it and it's coded as 240 as a row house or a condo, so I don't know how, we get it's very strange. This one, I spent hours. I can't figure out what the 11th bedroom is. Is it one of these rooms with a fireplace? This is, again, I'll put some of that into my closing comments for overall. Again, having a tier 2 and a tier 3 in the same building, can we do that? This is going to be a legal thing to look at again for this property. And I think at this point, at the very least, it's table. At the very best, you grant 2 tier 2s until we sort it out, so as not to get into any legal murkiness until we can get a ruling on what this means. The parking is a whole nother issue, looking at the parking spaces. The parking diagram provided shows 8, but.
I'm sorry, Ellie,
Yeah.
I was so engrossed.
Okay, I'm sorry too, when we went to the thing. I will tidy this up, but this one is perplexing, and it really needs to be looked at very differently than anything else you've ever analyzed. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, before we go on to the next public comment, I would like to clear one item up, and this is Sam Taylor for the record, Taylor. In respect to the 2 APNs being assigned to one building, in a multifamily setting, much as like Tahoe Beach Club, you have what is called a horizontal property regime, where you have condo type units on multiple floors having individual APNs assigned, and I suspect that that is the case. I don't know the underlying zoning for this, but my guess is it's probably multifamily, and if so, then it would allow them to create that sort of horizontal property thing.
Kathy Oyster, Oyster. I have a couple of questions. First of all, how many permits are we allowing people to have now? How many occupants are you going to allow as far as maximums? Airbnb has had numerous party houses, so much so that they have limited the number you can put in there to 16. And that is them trying to cut down the party house. Is Douglas County going to be the recipient of all these party house locations now? So is that something you should be considering? Are you willing, or do you have a comfort zone for that? I totally agree with Mr. Byer that, you know, you can't throw up your hands and say, there are no parking rules up there. We know it's a problem. Make them put the rules. Even if the community up there, if it's an HOA or some other established community, is required to identify these spots for specifically this homeowner. If he can have the pull to make that happen, he should make that happen. You guys shouldn't have to make that happen. He has presented an incomplete package for you guys to even study. It's an unaccepted package. Push it back.
Thank you, Kathy. Any further public comment on this item?
So Linda Dengler, Dengler, is a record. And, you know, I think I'm on the same page as all of you guys. This is really a bad application. It really doesn't present what you really need to know to make a decision. They really have to clean it up. And I really, really think that every new permit for any reason, for any level, must be all new information, not signed in 2015, as some applications I've looked at. How can you submit something for 2022 that was signed and submitted back then that doesn't have anything to do with today? The pictures aren't right, the documents aren't right, that kind of thing. So, you know, we really need real, brand new, signed by the owner today, pictures today, advertisements today. And so I think I'm in agreement with all of you. It really should be put off until we can get, and I think you need to make it a rule somewhere that it all be new, because this old stuff doesn't, I mean, look what you're going through because you're reading old stuff. You're looking at old pictures. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll close public
I
comment.
have one, Bernie
Oh,
Strello,
sorry,
for the record.
Bernie.
On page 99, this is just a clarification of the easement. I just want to make sure. So page 99, Bonnie Harwood pointed this out to me, thank you, Bonnie. That the property manager is listed out here with the license, the Nevada license number. So Amber Fuller McDade, she has a 530 number, which is that California, doesn't follow, right?
Doesn't matter.
And then the office location is Reno. They have the address. So I'm just bringing that up because I wasn't, because there was a question about the property manager.
Yeah, Sam Taylor for the record, if I may, Madam Chair. That was part of it. I mean, Lauren had some initial concerns about who was actually managing the property. It was clarified, Judy, that Amber is the one who's the property manager. But Keith brought up the fact that Sean Ward is listed as managing the property under the advertisement. And Lux Vacay, I do believe, is actually involved in this particular property, based upon my knowledge that resulted from the Kalthoff litigation. So there were like affidavits presented indicating that, yeah, this property was being managed by Lux Vacation. And which case, and just interestingly, just for the record, I'd like to note that I literally just went online right now, looked at the Nevada Real Estate Division for property managers. Neither Sean Ward or Zorko Aguilar are listed as licensed property manager in the state of Nevada. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't come in under some other name that I couldn't ascertain at this time, maybe a property management name or something. They couldn't have done that, but I did research that in great detail before, and even went so far as to call the property management division and go over all the different variants that could possibly be presented. And there was no indication that Sean Ward, Zorka Aguilar, or Lux Vacation in any sort of different format or name variant is licensed in the state of Nevada to engage in property management services.
And that's what's in the advertisement.
That's what's in the advertisement.
This person's not in the advertisement.
Sean Ward is in the advertisement,
Okay,
just for the record.
thank you. What would you like to do?
Madam Chair, I think I made a motion, but I'd like to rephrase it if I can, or restate it.
Yeah, I don't think we called it a motion because we hadn't had our public comment yet. So
Madam
let's
Chair,
have a motion.
I would like to motion that we table this agenda item at help me out.
343 Tramway.
343 Tramway to the next available meeting.
If I may, Madam Chair, I would recommend next regularly scheduled meeting.
Next regularly scheduled meeting.
So the 9/28 or, because don't you have to do that in a motion for tabling? Actually say when the date will
Okay,
be?
on 9/28, 2022.
Second.
Okay, bring your lunch on 9/28. Okay, do I have a second? Lauren? Okay, I have a motion and a second to table this item until the next regularly scheduled meeting on September 28th. All those in
Can I
favor?
have some discussion first, Madam Chair?
Oh, discussion, yes.
Keith Byer. I do think if there's something we haven't discussed that we want for that meeting, it would be good to let people know. I've already mentioned, that I want to understand this neighborhood better because that might filter into this. I do think we all need to be starting preparing what do we do when HOAs don't have they pave the parking and they're done. The other thing is, and Mr. Taylor, I'm looking for legal advice. If we can't get clarity of who does what, you've got all these different companies, I would like to know who gets paid for what. Sometimes the proof is in the pudding. I don't know if I can ask that question, but I mean, I'll be definitely interested in, I'll ask the question, you may tell me it's a, improper question, it's a, violation of privacy, but I just don't understand. There's so many people involved in this. I want an organization chart. Who's Julio? And where does he live? Here's Amber, here's Sean, here's all the people in this application. And I do want to point out that this application has been made, right? I got very irritated when someone appealed one of our decisions to the Board of County Commissioners and they had remediated problems. We're not the fact checkers and the people who identify problems that you can remediate and then get approval. This application needs to stand on its own, and this is not 1 month to remediate all the problems. This is, all the questions ought to be what was in their application. They applied for a tier 2, tier 3, and the answers ought to be this, not, well, we've reorganized all of these things and now this is what it is. It needs to be an explanation of the application they applied to the county for permit.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Sam Taylor, again for the record, Douglas County DA's office.
We
T-A-Y-L-O-R.
know how to spell.
I'm just saying, Ernie wanted everybody to spell their name, so, and you were demanding it be done every time, so. Yeah, here we go. Yes, in response to Keith's query specifically relative to the information that we can require, I think with respect to this particular issue, given the number of persons, given the fact that you have proof online that Mr. Ward is acting in a managerial capacity, managing the property on behalf of the owner, at least with respect to the ads that you saw, I think it is a fair thing to ask, is Mr. or Miss Aguilar, Mr. Ward, or Lux Vacate being paid in any way to assist managing this property, and to ask specificity, what are they doing specifically for that money? What are they doing on behalf of the owner? And I think this board has a right to know the answer to that question, as well as Amber. What is she doing specifically with respect to this particular property? What are her duties? And I think that it is a fair question to ask, and if the answer is not provided to the satisfaction of the board could, on that basis alone, deny the tier 3 permit. That is my opinion.
Those are all the questions I have, and like I said, I think we ought to surface any questions now so that we don't have to surface something in the next meeting and, well, we got to come back to that answer and table. I don't want to table it again, because while we're tabling it, it's a tier 3, right? It's just an unapproved tier 3 because that's how our process works. So if anyone has any questions they need answers to, I think it would be good. But then I'm ready to vote if anybody else doesn't have anything.
I would like for Mr. Strelos and his team to find out how many structures there are in that area. I think we know that, but how many are rentals that have been approved, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and what's the total number, of those? Because when I looked up Arcus, I noticed that 339 Tramway, number D was in there, but 339 Tramway number C was not in there. And so there's multiple other permits in and around this. And so that comes back to the parking issue. There is so many permits in this little confined little area. I don't see how you can put the parking even if you walked a quarter mile away. So that's my question. And why wasn't 345 in here as well?
345 says here too.
I know, but it should have been as part of.
Oh, it's very,
It's pretty close to.
GIS has
yeah.
no information
Yeah.
on that, I noticed that also.
0 feet away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any more discussion? Are you prepared to vote? Okay, so.
Before you go, this is Ernie Strelo for the record. So, on page 86, I think answers your question. When it comes to Tramway, there's 962 housing parcels, of which 135 are VHRs. The neighborhood could have a maximum of 192 based on current density required, allowable. And so it's at 14% right now for that neighborhood.
So, Mr. Strahan, this is what I think I asked this question. So we're looking at this neighborhood, it is somewhat different. In those 962 housing parcels are also timeshares.
Yes.
Okay.
But that's what I've been led to believe at prior meetings, right? Because let's reverse this. Let's say that there are a significant number of those timeshares. There may be people who, I do not believe that my area is a tourist zone any more than any other neighborhood, or it may be the vast majority of this and everybody accepts that this is a tourist zone. And to know that I'm not saying that your math is wrong and that there's more than 135. What I'm saying is, and I'm not saying we changed the 192, but what I'm saying is, if I want to know how many timeshares are in the 962, so I can figure out how many people live in a structure which is not a timeshare, which do not have a VHR permit. If there's only 2 people, they probably have already accepted this as their neighborhood. If it's 75%, that's a different story to me. So that's why I'm trying to break out 962 into units which are not timeshares versus units that are timeshares. Do you understand that?
So your question is?
How many timeshares are in the 962?
Thank you.
I'm gonna add, Lauren or me, can we add to that how many full-time residents, because I would like to know how many full-time residents there are in Tahoe Village.
How would you do that?
How do you know that?
I know how many full-time residents there are in my HOA.
That's because you know them all.
I'm sorry.
Busy about it. I mean,
Keith Byron, I thought the census would tell you that.
I don't know,
A
but I'm
census
just
would
saying, if
include
we're
full-time.
trying to find this out and we're asking the question about timeshares, I would also like to know how many full-time, if we can get that information. And then if we can add to that, because it sounds like you're probably making a phone call to them, is I'd like to see how they handle parking for most other people in the Tahoe Village, because my understanding is they're allowed 2 parking spots. They don't say which ones, it's first come, first served. And if they've got it in the CCRs, I'd like to see that.
Ernie Strelo, for the record, I have their HOA. I can send it to me the day we went and visited.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, so it says in there, they don't enforce it, but it'll say what it does.
Right.
Proper density, I'll see what I can find.
Yeah, you can't.
And then for residents, I can do, with the GIS, I can do an owner-renter comparison from the assessor's office. That's the only way I can figure that out. Or the HOA asset.
You might want to ask the HOA, because I have a lot of people who live full-time in the homes around me, but amazing, they're never there.
I'll ask them if they have a record.
Oh, they're there for...
For taxes.
They're for taxes.
No, not really.
Okay, so,
Yes, okay. Thanks.
should we vote?
Yeah.
Okay, let's vote that we're gonna table this until the next meeting. Mr. Strelo is gonna give us some information. We're all gonna start working really hard to find out how many neighbors are there. Linda's gonna knock on all the doors and find out who lives there full time.
No, when they come to the post office is when I address them.
It's easier.
Okay, so all those in favor of tabling this, do you have another question, or you're voting yes?
No, I'm voting yes.
Signify by saying aye. Thank you, now we're down to closing public comment.
We need an hour of it because it's only 4.
No, they need to go home at 4:30, because they have to drive home. And I have to leave at 3 in the morning tonight, or this morning, or whenever I'm.
Closing public comment?
Closing public comment, come on down.
That motion passed. Did I miss that?
Did we do it?
Did they vote?
Jump
on
up
the motion?
fast. You know, we ran out of paper here. We got to send it.
Oh, the mic right now.
One of those years.
Okay, Dale Roberts, ROBERTS. Now, you've seen me at a lot of the meetings, I've watched all the meetings, and I don't know if it's become very clear to me, if it hasn't become very clear to you yet, you're operating, doing all this stuff with next to nothing for information. Very little knowledge, very little information. You're doing it the best you can. Yet it's become very clear, and I'm sure to you too, that to me, that you need a better structure for the codes, better so you know what you're talking about when you do this, or how they can be enforced. And when people go and put in their permits and stuff, they need to have up-to-date, today information that is dealt with every time, even when they reapply. So really the only real thing to do here, to really think about it, moratorium on all permits being issued, even the ones when they come up for renewal, until you have a solid base to work off of, so you're not constantly sitting here every meeting, kicking the can around, constantly asking sometimes stupid questions, but they're stupid because you don't know what the answer might be, right? You don't even know what the right question is. I mean, come on. You know, I'm a nurse. When I have to go and get my license every year, I better have my shit in a row, all right? You don't have anything from anybody in a row. And you're sitting here asking questions that they can't even answer. So think about it.
Those in public comment.
Ellie Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R. When we receive supplemental information, and I'm the first to say I try to turn my stuff in a timely manner, I'm just addressing anybody, to have to read something, I'm not sure that how that issue may or may not be related to open meeting law, because we don't, as a board or the public or the fire department or anybody that's addressing this makes it right. I don't know if how we can ask the public to make sure these and give a time frame, me included. I want to make sure. Also in the same vein, Zoom works fine, but a lot of times if, and I've done one Zoom, not for this board, you can't hear unless there's a mic that is spoken into. It's very hard for the public if they want to make a meaningful comment from somewhere else. I know we're looking at all the different boards and things getting rid of Zoom. I would also suggest at the very least the owner needs to have a representative here if they can't be here. They're significantly benefiting from this process, and I think somebody should be here whether they can or cannot answer questions. Addressing the future of Tier 2s, I think needs to move to a priority. I don't understand the difference between 10 people and 12 people. And again, then all the parking requirements, all these things that we're talking about all come into play. I know it's going to take, and I've said constantly, 3 to 5 years. We have to add that Tier 2 to really understand the cumulative impacts of all the things that happen. My opinion. I'm glad loopholes are getting closed, like we discussed earlier. The last one today, again, is why we're doing this, to make sure that there's legal backup to understand how to analyze something that's so obscure that we can't call commercial until somebody provides a lawsuit out in the hinterlands for us to be able to use as precedent. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Go on. It's your
chance.
No, I'm ready. People want to go home now.
Oh, he's winding up for another one. Kathy Oyster, O-Y-S-T-E-R. We've talked a lot about this code enforcement of this set of rules. But the overarching theme that I think you've heard from the members of the audience, as well as several times from you guys, is zoning code. Zoning code is enforceable. And the enforcement officers that we have can hit those clearly. I mean, it's very clear if I have a big party going on next door and Liz, my neighbor's not there, that she's renting, let's say. So you could close it. You're not there yet with these rules, just by the questions you're having to ask each other and just by the submissions that are being presented and the frustration that's building on both sides of this. You don't need this. We don't need these hours long meetings that are just watching you guys go in circles. And it is, we're watching the circles. And it's not good for anybody. It's not good for our community. We need our leaders to lead. We need you to think about what you want and ask for it before you're at this meeting, before it's added to the agenda. And the reason you can't is because it's not a clear set of rules. It's not enforceable. You're not getting good intel from your fire department because why? It's really easy to move a bed from here to here. So you've got a situation where you're allowing a business to operate. I don't care what you call it. I'm going to call it a business, or I'm going to call it a multifamily dwelling unit because it's multiple families that are being put in that house. But the fact is, your zoning has residential, you've got Tahoe tourist, and you've got a Tahoe tourist high-use overlay. If you want to get control of that, you need to throw this back to TRPA, who threw it onto your shoulders with nothing, no support whatsoever. You need to throw it back to them and say, what are you going to do for Douglas County? I want to see some building. We clearly have a need for housing with kitchens in it, with multiple bedrooms in it. The hotels that we have are great for some people, but we can do better if we have something that looks like this here. And I'd like to see Douglas County make a few demands right back to them. That's all I have to say.
So I'm going to go back to the fact that the planning board is the one supposed to do special use permits. And I don't know how you guys got some permission to do this. But there's, you know, they submit an application. If it's a certain kind of application, it has to be notified to the entire community for a certain amount of days. And then there's another meeting about that. And then finally the decision is made and the planning commission has to sign off on it. That's the special use permit. And that's what you guys are signing off on. And Sam's not, okay, I don't understand it right. But I was reading the special use permit codes, and every one of them wouldn't qualify for the traffic and the pedestrian traffic that it's doing to our community. Not one of these that's a tier 3 would qualify with the numbers of cars, the added traffic, the added pedestrians. It wouldn't qualify for that. And then I go back to the notice and order that was put against 650 Tina Court, which was a commercial wedding business, which after 5.5 years, because I was being a real obnoxious person, they had to look at the zoning code and say, oh yeah, we don't have to, you know, that's not allowed. And now they have the new rules, which I've sent to you on the notice and order, and those rules state what can be in the house and how it has to be, including the owner has to live in it for these big party things, not just weddings, not just planned event parties, bachelor parties, they're all qualifying that. And so, you know, that's what they're telling them they have to have in order, it's called a home occupancy. So none of these qualify to be a tier 3. You really have to put a moratorium on it. You cannot do this because they've got to meet those codes and none of those owners are living in there. 93% of them aren't even from our area. So please look at those. I sent them to you because code enforcement are the ones who put it out. The notice is from them. They're stating the rules. Every single VHR should have to abide by those rules if they're running parties and whatever. That's how I see it. Sam can shake his head again, probably. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Any more closing public comment?
My name is Kurt Brown, B-R-O-W-N. I live at Elks Point, or I should say I have a house at Elks Point. I've been sitting here for, 4 hours? I've served on multi-billion-dollar advisory boards for multi-billion-dollar corporations. I have served on the board of directors of multi-million-dollar corporations. I have served on HOAs over the years. I've served on many county boards and state boards and city boards. As I have sat here this day and watched this procedure go on, your information that you have had is inadequate. It's insufficient. It's not correct. It's lacking. Some of it's not relevant. A lot of it is. But the basis of gathering information is good procedures and forms. And good people to put those forms together with the proper questions you need answered based upon what your mission is. And I know you're an advisory board and it's great. But you need the expertise to get the proper information to you in a proper form that's understandable by you and the people that you serve are going to give the information to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any additional closing public comment? Seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting, close public comment and adjourn the meeting.